to another stream. So, did a bit of a different intro there, and I'm hoping that this has all gone well, and that people can see me, hear me. Okay, I've got the stream up next to me, and it looks like it's going well. But if anyone's just in the chat and can let me know that like everything is good for them, and then we can get on it and see what this stream is about. I see Mag's already in the chat. Well, I don't know if you prefer Mag or Mags, because I anyone I've ever met before goes by Mags rather than Mag. But turn up the mic volume. Yeah, I thought this might be an issue. Okay, cool. So I'm turning it up now. What I did was I kept it down. I kept it slightly down so that when I play the video, it should be balanced out. And I was thinking, like you guys on your end would just put your volume up. But I know some people on their devices, their volume is like, even at the max, it's not very good. But I mean, hopefully when we actually start watching the video, the sound is going to be fine because I've got it on max for everything on my end. So if it's quiet, then you have to blame Life Sucks who uploaded the video. No, obviously. So cool. So what are we going to be doing in this stream? So, well, there's a few, so for the past couple of streams, I've had some like updates or like little things that I would usually share in like a chill stream, but I haven't really been doing any chill streams. I've just been super busy with my ordinary day job recently, that I just haven't been able to do as much as I was doing like around Christmas or just before Christmas. So okay, cool. Mag's saying it's good now. Yeah, anyway, so I just haven't been able to do as many chill streams, and with these like themed streams, so for the theme of this one, we're going to be watching Matt or Life Sucks' conversation he had with some college students in the US about antinatalism. And usually with these like themed ones, I want to keep it on the theme, because if someone clicks on it and they're like, oh, okay, I want to watch a live stream of this with a bit of commentary or whatever, I don't want to be waffling for like half an hour about random stuff when they've clicked on it for that thing. But because I'm not doing the chill streams as much anymore, which is when I would do more chit chat, I thought maybe we can do a bit of chit chat at the start. But I've also, for anyone that doesn't know already, nearer the end, after we've had a little look at Matt's video, he's going to be coming on, and I'm going to be having a bit of a conversation with him, which I think it's his morning now because he's in the US. But yeah, so I don't want to like chit chat too much before we actually get on to the main thing, because then it will push everything back and it will push back when he's supposed to come on. But a few like things just before we start. So actually, is there a few things? I've got one thing. So one thing was, some people might remember I posted it on, I think just on Twitter. I'm not sure if I posted it on the community tab. But a couple of months ago, I was at a conference with a friend in Amsterdam. And it was as far as I'm aware, and I'm pretty sure as far as I think the organizers said this as well, as far as they're aware, it was the world's first misanthropy conference. And for anyone that doesn't know, misanthropy, it's understood in a lot of different ways. The general understanding people have of it is like it's a hatred of humanity. So if someone calls someone a misanthrope, it's someone who like hates humans and stuff. That's how people commonly understand it. In the more like intellectual academic sphere, which is what this conference was, because it was basically all academics there. Okay, maybe that's unfair. There were a lot of academics there, but there was like students, and there was a couple people, just random people who'd come off, had seen it advertised and they live locally or whatever. Um, but yeah, so in at that conference, it was it was talking about misanthropy in more of like the intellectual way, which is um, having a negative judgment of humanity, basically. So you can live your life having interactions with individual people that are perfectly like good and pleasant and all that sort of stuff, and you like individual people, but you recognize overall that actually humans as a species have been very destructive, and they have this very dark side to them, which runs through all of us. I think it was Alexander Solzhenitsyn, if I'm saying his name right, um, who he said the line between good and evil doesn't run through states or governments or corporations or stuff like that. He said it runs through every single individual, like every one of us. We all have this, good and bad side, and we all have these, if we're put in certain situations, our dark sides might come out. And I think, anyone watching this now is, I think, fully aware of the dark side of humanity, right? Anyway, so that was what the conference was about, and then they broke down the conference in sort of like individual panels. Each panel had three presentations. Each panel had three presentations and one topic. So one of the topics was, one of them was antinatalism. So there were three presentations on antinatalism, and I forget what the other panels exactly were, but like the vast majority of presentations were like vegan related. So it was a very vegan conference. I think there were probably a few people there that weren't vegan, but they were definitely in the minority. It was a very vegan heavy conference, even though it wasn't specifically a vegan conference, which I think was cool to see, and understandable as well, because if you've got a conference about the dark side of humanity, well, who is going to be the group of people that's probably going to know about that, like, to a significant amount? It's going to be vegans, right? And sure, there are other groups as well, but, vegans are like one of those groups that would be pretty well acquainted with the negative side of humanity. Before we go on, I just want to say hey to a few people in the chat. So I've said hey to Mag already. Lenny, hey Lenny. Pamela, and ethically based omnivore. So yeah, okay, cool. So that was the conference. But let's get on to like the antinatalism part of the conference. So I did a presentation with a friend who I won't name, because they don't want to be sort of, they're not really a public person, they're quite private, but they are antinatalist, they're vegan, and they wanted to do like a presentation at this conference, and like said, do you want to do it with me? And I was like, yeah, cool. So we wrote like an essay and then boiled it down to a presentation, and the topic of our one was the connections or the interlinks between three things: veganism, misanthropy, and antinatalism. And in that in our presentation, we spoke about what are the connecting things between those three, because obviously not every vegan is an antinatalist or a misanthrope, and not antinatalist is vegan or a misanthrope, and etc., etc. But those three, as like a triad, they seem to fit quite well together, and there are quite a few people who hold those three beliefs or like perceptions or value systems, or however you want to put them. And I'm sure like a lot of people in the chat are in this. No, it wasn't David, because David is not antinatalist. I think David over time is becoming more and more sympathetic with antinatalism. I think against his will as well. I think he's just more and more becoming pissed off with humans. But no, it wasn't David. But yeah, so that's what the presentation was about. Very briefly, the other two presentations on antinatalism. One of them was these two people. They were talking about. I can't fully remember it. It was something like it was a queer interpretation of Benatar's asymmetry or something like that. Um, and to be honest, it was as niche as it sounds. Um, I I mean, it was a while ago now that I was at the conference, but um, yeah, I wouldn't be able to recite like all of the things that they talked about because um, I didn't necessarily like fully track what they were saying when it was actually happening. And then the other one was um, this lady giving a presentation on a book, which I forget the name of, but it was a book that had heavy sort of vegan and antinatalist. No, I think it had heavy vegan undertones, but she was giving an antinatalist. She was talking about the potential antinatalist undertones that you could draw from it as well. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, those were the three. And then what would happen is, and we will get onto the video in a minute, but what would happen is like all three on the topic would give their presentation, and then after all of the three had given their presentation, we would then go back up and all sit in a row and take questions. So everyone who's done the presentations on that topic will then answer questions as a group, right? And it was a 3-day conference. I was only there for 2 days because I was actually working at the same time. So I was working both days, and then I had to go back because there was a meeting I couldn't miss and stuff. But so I missed the last day. But for the 2 days that I was there, our topic of antinatalism was, at least from my perception, I know I'm a bit biased, but I think it was the most popular one. Like, it got the most questions asked. There was no awkward pauses when they said, like, does anyone have any questions? People's hands went straight up. People were very engaged in it, which was good. Yeah, it was interesting. Um, just trying to think if there's anything else to say about the conference. I had a really good pizza afterwards. All the food at the conference was vegan as well, because the two women who organized it are both vegan. So that was cool. And it was actually odd. If anyone has any questions about the conference, then please just put them in the chat, or even better, use the link in the pinned comment. And yeah, and I'll be happy to answer them, within reason, anyway. And yeah, but we can start the thing soon. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's start the video because I've rambled enough. I would ramble more if it was a chill stream, but I don't want to like delay Matt at the end of at the other end. So let's get into the actual video. So basically, what this video is if anyone doesn't know, so Matt, who is Life Sucks on YouTube, he's another antinatalist channel. He sort of I've been watching his stuff for quite a while. He tends to upload, at least now, I'm not sure about like before, but like recently he tends to upload like not that regularly, but when he does, they're either like longer videos. Well, no, all of the videos are very well done, but they tend to be like either longer videos or like very like choreographed or whatever you would call it videos. So like he did one recently called Letter to a Natalist Nation, I think, or something. No, I am a natalist. I can't remember the name. That's really bad. But it was like a parody or a piss take or however you want to put it of a documentary or video or something that has gone that was apparently popular recently. I didn't actually see the original, but yeah. Anyway, so Matt, he does antinatalist content on YouTube. I think he's been moving recently, so he's been uploading less. But anyway, a while ago, actually 3 years ago, he was invited to speak at a discussion about antinatalism at a university. So he was talking with college students. Lenny's just confirmed in the chat. It's called I Am a Natalist. Yeah. No one clip that. Yeah, so he spoke to these students, and I think this is a decent idea going into universities and getting this conversation started, because universities are supposed to be the places where you're supposed to discuss ideas, right? So yeah, in the spirit of like encouraging this sort of thing, and just looking back on his conversation with these students, I thought it would be interesting. So let's have a look. Hopefully people can see that. And hopefully people are going to be able to hear it as well. So I should be a little person now with a big backdrop of the video I'm sharing. I'm just going to check the chat before we kick off. And just say hello before we start. I'm just going to say hello to a few other people. Massilia, hey Massilia, Final Fantasy debater, Germ Theory hoax, and I don't see anyone. Alden, hey. Cool. Okay, cool. Let's have a go. Please let the fucking audio be decent. Okay, cool.
I don't know if I'm the only anti-natalist activist who showed up here, but
right. Hopefully that is loud enough. Hopefully the audio is all good. Actually, a quick thing before we start. So I skipped the first 3 minutes because it's Matt talking in the car. It isn't in his car. It's not actually part of the discussion. But the one thing that I thought I would like just mention that he does say in that first 3 minutes is that when he first arrived at a discussion on ethics, apparently he walked in the room and they were all eating like cheese pizza, which is such a fail 101. I mean, this is basic ethics, like, oh, we're going to have a discussion on ethics, but here is some here are the products of violence, and I don't know if YouTube will let me say the word, but the sexual abuse of the female reproductive system. That seems legit. It's like such clown behavior. But anyway, let's have a go at this.
I came into existence because my parents wanted to satisfy.
Oh yeah, sorry. So the other thing, apparently the person who organized this was also there, and they started it by asking everyone, why were you born? So this is Matt answering it to kick it off.
Their own selfish desires. They didn't really care what misfortune I was going to be involved in. They did it for themselves, not for me. I make anti-natalist themed artwork, and I have an anti-natalist YouTube channel called Life Sucks. And I promote anti-natalism on that channel, and I come at it from the negative utilitarian perspective. So to me, standard utilitarianism values happiness, which to me is just a term that doesn't really mean anything when you compare it to suffering. So all my ethics are suffering focused. The only value in the universe to me is suffering. Life to me is just a...
Yeah, that might be interesting. I might ask Matt later. I've got some questions I've already prepared for him, but I might ask him later about what he thinks about happiness, because for me, like, happiness is an important thing. Like, once someone exists, I think it's, something that we should value. Like, I agree, like, if I'm understanding him correctly, like, I agree, suffering, I think, holds way more weight. But I do think people's happiness and fulfillment is obviously important. And I'm sure he obviously wouldn't disregard that. But yeah, if he doesn't elaborate anymore, like in the video, I might ask him about like what his actual sort of, opinions and stuff on happiness are.
Replicating molecule, no purpose. And there's a horrific price that we pay for bringing life into existence. To put someone into this dangerous world on purpose, where they'll be tortured and killed, to me is essentially the same thing as committing an act of premeditated murder. And it's my opinion that this is one of the most important subjects we could possibly discuss, so that's why I'm here today.
As you can tell from my opening statement, I was mostly going to use ethical arguments in addition to Benatar's. The first order of business was to suss out what antinatalism is and means. So we had to discuss if the problem is human procreation, or is the problem sentience. The moderator had a lot of quotes from Zapf's The Last Messiah.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think what Matt is saying here is he distinguishes antinatalism and nephilism, as in antinatalism is about human procreation and nephilism is about sentience, um, which is interesting. I mean, the way I view it is just like antinatalism is about sentient beings. Like but I mean, maybe I don't know what his experience has been. I know some people say that we need a whole different term for sentiocentric antinatalism just because um, the anthropocentric form is very dominant, and so it's worth distinguishing rather than using the same term and it can become mixed up. But to me, like antinatalism itself is sentiocentric. Like I see no reason to draw the moral line at humans. Um, this is actually something I'm gonna be doing a video on at some point soon. Like it'll be one of my next ones. And also hopefully getting someone on who is anthropocentric and having a discussion with them. Um, but yeah, so yeah, it's interesting that he like distinguishes in that way because I would just say that antinatalism is sentiocentric, but yeah, maybe he feels the need to distinguish because people, you know, often the word becomes confused. I don't know.
Which is a very human-centered essay. So I'm not surprised that devotees of Zapfa don't seem to be animal rights activists as much as Ephelis or Benatarians.
It's interesting you brought up animals. I wasn't even thinking about that because, like, if it's basically your argument is actually I don't have consent to exist.
Yeah.
You were never asked. Neither do any other animals. So is it essentially immoral for life to exist in the first place?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem I have with Zapfa's essay, The Last Messiah, is that it's so human-centric. You know, like, who cares about humans when animals have been here for 500 million years, killing each other, ripping each other's faces off? We've only been here for really, like, I mean, we've only had culture for 10,000 years. Maybe, I think, 100, 200,000 years humans have been existed. I mean, that's nothing compared to what animals have experienced. So to me, antinatalism, and sometimes this philosophy that applies to animals is called ephilism, which is life spelled backwards. It's all about life. Life is a negative, not just human life or the ethics of creating human.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, it seems like that is basically how he distinguishes them. Is that basically antinatalism is like the human part, and then when you start when you start to talk about sentience generally, then he uses the term ephilism, which yeah, I mean people. Yeah, this is why terms get confusing, right? Because people use them in different ways. But it's interesting because like a lot of it's when it comes to animals, and I'm going to talk about this more in like the video that I'm going to put together, but actually the like the clarity of my thinking around this became like better when actually the most recent video I published about antinatalism in Germany, I had Simon and Lenny on, and Lenny said something where he was talking about how antinatalism like has two parts to it, and he was saying there's like an evaluative part, and did he say a normative part? Maybe I might be getting the words wrong there, but he was basically saying the evaluative part is making the evaluation about life. How is life viewed? Is it positive? Is it negative? You know, so a lot of like religious people will see it as very positive. Well, not even religious. Also, a lot of like life-loving atheists as well. But like, it's how do you value the creation of life? Do you see it as a negative or a positive? And antinatalism in this evaluative part evaluates life as like a negative thing, right? Or at least the creation of it. But then there's a separate bit which you have to go a bit further, is that okay, well that's how we're going to characterize life, but the normative part is, well, what actually does that then mean that we should practically be doing? What are the sort of behavioral or practical implications of that? And that's where you get to, oh, okay, well, procreation is morally questionable, unethical, however you want to phrase it. And it was interesting when Lenny said that, like, you know, when you have something in your mind and you understand it, but when someone puts it into words into a succinct way, it kind of clicks more in your head. And when he said that, I was like, oh, okay, now I understand, you know, a bit better how, you know, there are these sort of two layers to it and how they fit together. And I think the disagreement that people have about whether, you know, I think all antinatalists, I think, agree on the human part, but some of them exclude animals, right? Or don't include, however you want to put it. Maybe some people would say I'm like being biased if I use the word exclude because it's like a negatively tinged thing. But that disagreement about whether animals should be included or not, it can happen on two levels. Like that disagreement can happen on two levels, which was interesting, which it clicked more again when Lenny said this, because it can happen on an evaluative level. So someone could just say, well, yeah, you know, I think, you know, creating humans is bad because I think the substance, the quality or the character of human life is such that I think it's negative for it to come into being. But I think animal life or non-human animal life, it is of a different character where it coming into being is not really any sort of moral issue. And so the disagreement can happen on that level. I think on that level, I think it's just pure speciesism. I can't. I've heard a few people put forward a few different arguments, again, which I'll include in the video, for why they think the animals' lives are to such a different degree that it doesn't become an issue to bring them into existence. I think it just boils down to them being speciesist and not really understanding actually animals as individuals and being as morally relevant beings. But then there's another level that it can happen on, which is the normative level. You know, as Lenny was saying, he was like, the normative level is, okay, well, we've taken this evaluation, but then what does this mean about our behavior? Like, how can we sort of, how do we sort of grapple with this in our sort of moral prescriptions, however you want to put it? And that's another level on which people can disagree with including animals, because some people will say, oh, well, you know, you can't reason with animals or something like that. You know, with humans, you know, they would say it is a negative thing that animals come into existence, but actually we shouldn't really do anything about it because, you know, we can reason with humans and all this other stuff, but we can't do that with animals. And so, you know, if there was going to be some normative thing, it would mean intervening in them non-voluntarily, whereas with humans it can, you know, in theory at least, it can be done purely voluntarily, stuff like this. And yeah, so I don't want to get too much into it now because I'm going to do like a video on it. But yeah, what Matt just said there sort of like sparked that off again in my head, and it reminded me of what Lenny said. But anyway, let's crack on.
Animals don't know any better. That's the problem. Humans do. So animals don't have a choice. There is no ethics there. But if they did know, hopefully they would come to the conclusion this is wrong.
Would it be worthwhile for humanity to last long enough to sterilize all other life?
Absolutely. That's like the only reason for us to continue to exist, in my opinion.
Is to be the stewards of life's extinction.
Yeah, sometimes it's called the graceful exit.
Okay.
So we'd have to keep a few humans around so we can make sure all the animal life can go extinct, you know, as peacefully and painlessly as possible, and then we can turn the lights out.
I don't really like that extinction got brought up so quickly because people become fixated on it. I mean, it is the end goal of antinatalism and efflism, but I feel like we do have to kind of nudge people a little bit more slowly into accepting extinction, and it's probably best to start out with arguments against human procreation first.
Hey MJ, yeah, sorry about the volume. I think it's like I've done everything I can do on my end. I think it's just like if your volume's on full, then maybe use headphones or something like that. Lenny's put in the chat as well that apparently Oliver Halleck, I'm not sure how you pronounce their second name, has recently released a book about antinatalism. Are you able to send me a link to that, Lenny? Just on whatever platform that you want to. Yeah, sorry, let's continue.
However, I do realize that people are going to reach the logical conclusion themselves pretty fast and bring it up anyways. Maybe it's better to get it out of the way. So then the moderator asks the question,
why do you suppose folks who have the capability of doing that, current presidents, czars of Russia, haven't done that?
To like destroy the planet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're all natalists pretty much. This philosophy is kind of new, really. And, you know, it's something that we should really come together and, like, starting small, but come to a consensus. And it'd be great if everyone could get on board. I mean, because speaking of consent, you know, I mean, there's this thing called this thought experiment called the red button experiment, or thought experiment, and it's if you could press a red button and destroy the planet painlessly, would you do it? And of course, my answer would be yes. I would do it without hesitation. But I would be violating everyone's consent on Earth who wants to continue to exist, including all the animals. You know, they don't know; they might want to keep living. So that is a problem. And of course, the other problem is a nuclear disaster could bring about great misfortune and pain and suffering. So we want to do it in the most ethical way possible.
I'm curious, when you mentioned consent, I did not consent to exist. I suppose neither did any of us. Yet, if you ask me now if I post event consent, I would say yes, I am happy to be alive.
This whole thing of like whatever, I don't know what you would call it, like post hoc consent. It's basically like people say, oh, well, if I look around me, the vast majority of people are happy to be alive. Therefore, we can make a reasonable assumption that the person that I'm going to create is going to be like that. So it's fine to do that. I think there are some like key misunderstandings of antinatalism, which like because people have this misunderstanding, they go down that line and think it makes sense. Yeah, I think I'm hesitant to like go into it in too much detail now because I'm going to do a video exactly on that topic actually, about like it's kind of irrelevant that most people like I don't know if you could say the vast majority. I guess it would be the vast majority of people, are happy that they were created. In my eyes, that doesn't really change anything. I think like good for them. Like now they exist. Like that is good. Like obviously that's preferable to everyone not just like hating their life the whole time. Obviously it's better once people exist they actually enjoy their lives. But when it comes to thinking about, well, should we create more? It just seems like an irrelevant fact to me. But I will talk about that more in the video I'm going to do. And Alden was asking about how many people were at this conference. I'm guessing you mean the conference I was talking about at the start. I would say, I mean, I didn't do a head count of it, but I would say maybe if not everyone was there for all the days, so there were different people there on different days, and there were some people who were there on every day. But I would say overall, if you include everyone that attended, it was maybe like 50, maybe more than 50, maybe between 50 and 70, something like that. Or maybe more, and I'm downplaying it. I can't, but I think around that. And also, I won't say their name just in case they don't want me to. But someone has left a tip of £3, saying greetings. You know who you are. Thank you so much. That's very generous for you to donate that. And hopefully in the future, I'm sort of any sort of support people are sending my way, I'm sort of a bit like a squirrel, like storing it and making okay, if I need to buy a subscription to something or something for the channel or whatever, then I would take from it. But I'm hoping to sort of build something up so that when I can sort of do big upgrades with things, or if I'm working on some sort of project in the background or something to do with antinatalism, and it needs some sort of funds, then I can put I've got a store there to put them towards to sort of facilitate that, if you get what I mean. Yeah, I am working on some stuff in the background, which I'm not sort of making public yet. I mean, it will be in the future, but yeah. So thanks so much to the person who donated that. You may not know where it's going at the moment, but it's definitely going towards something productive, which you will find out about in the future. Oh, and I actually forgot, I should probably say this as well. In the description of this video, there's a link to Patreon, where if you join that, you will be able to join a private Discord that I've put together, which is like a supporters Discord. So anyone that sort of like supports me on an ongoing basis, or someone, you know, who maybe makes like a one-off, like very generous like donation, then, you know, I'm adding them to this Discord, or they can join, and they get certain perks there. So one of the perks actually is relevant for this stream. So when Matt comes on later, I actually asked everyone in the Discord, I said, hey, I got a stream in a couple of days. Matt is coming on from Life Sucks. I'm going to be asking him some questions. Send me any questions you want me to ask him, and I will, you know, I will ask any that we have time to ask or to fit in. So I've got some questions from the Discord, from people who have supported, and I'll be putting some of those to Matt. So if you want to be able to do stuff like that in the future, then definitely head over there. And there's some other perks as well, which I haven't mentioned, like monthly hangouts and stuff. But there's more details when you go over there. Anyway, let's continue. And MJ saying, how many people in the Discord at the moment? Well, not everyone that has been invited has joined. I think some people are just happy to support, and they don't want any sort of extra thing. They're just happy. But I think off the top of my head, it's something like 5 or 6 at the moment. So it's still very small, which is fine for me. I'm happy for, to have like given that it's small, it means that I can interact with the individual people more than if it was like larger. So, maybe it will get larger in the future, but at the moment, I can have relatively like lengthy discussions with people in there. And we have already. And then the same person has just made another donation and said, spend it on toffees, mate. It doesn't matter to me. All the best. Yeah. Thank you. I won't. I mean, I don't actually like toffees, to be honest. Or actually, I haven't had one in years, so I don't know. But no, thank you a lot. And it'll go to something better than toffees, even if you're fine with it going to toffees.
I would rather to have been alive than not to have existed at all.
Yeah, it's because life is addictive.
I'm happy. I guess I'm happy to be addicted.
Right. Says the person who doesn't have cancer.
Yes.
Right.
I'm in a privileged position to say that.
Right.
But my point is that a lot of people can say that.
Oh yeah, but the question is it ethical for you to impose life on someone else, even though they might have a terrible life?
You don't really know if they'll have a bad or a good life.
That's right.
Though.
It's true.
What if, let's imagine someone had a horrible childhood, so they want to have kids to give that child a good childhood.
Right.
Is that still unethical in your opinion?
Yes,
They're thinking about doing good.
Right, because that kid could have cancer, that kid could get AIDS, that kid get run over. I mean, there's like thousands and thousands of things that could go wrong, and so few things that could go right.
What level of like certainty would you need? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of actions we do every day that we don't know what the effect will be, because you just can't predict into the future.
Right.
So like, how is it fair, or like not fair, but like makes sense to like say like, because you can't know what will happen, you can't do that, because there might be a lot of stuff you could apply that to.
Right, but the overwhelming odds are that it's going to be a negative outcome. I mean, everyone dies, 100% guaranteed, and death is usually seen as a bad thing.
Is there no concept to the antinatalist of the good death?
Like, what would be an example of that?
The death one greets as an old friend, the one we're all striving towards, right? Not to meet our ends as enemies or foes.
That just like greeting death as an old friend just sounds to me like just a crazy amount of cope. Like like sure, once you're here, it's good to have that sort of mindset. Like obviously, or I don't know, maybe it's not obvious. Maybe there's a better way, but it seems like a decent way of approaching the situation to me, given that you have to go through it once you're here. But how is that at all relevant to creating a new person? Like it's good once you're here because you have to face it. But they don't have to face it. They don't exist. Like the only reason they're going to face it is if you create them. So it just makes no sense.
But it's inevitable coming together, right? Like, is there a way one could die peacefully?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I hope that it happens to all of you, and hope I also have. I also have
What
a
a
peaceful
thing to
death.
wish on
Yeah.
this holiday season.
Then the moderator polled the room about who would want to live forever, and not shockingly, many of them think that they would like that.
I would not want to live forever, but I'm kind of I haven't thought about this enough to to really have like a massively informed opinion. But if there was some sort of like life extending technology, obviously my situation can change, but given the track that my life is on now, I would probably be tempted to use it just because like I don't know if this is gonna sound like up myself or like my head's too big to get through the doorway, but like I think people who have like solid people who care about what happens in the world and want to make the world a better place, are they not the ones who should probably be using that technology? Like I'm not sure if it should be selective because then you get into weird authoritarian things. But given that I and a lot of people in the chat, you know, and a lot of people in the antinatalist and vegan world are people who care about what happens, right? They want to make the world a better place. And so would it not be a good thing if they extend their lives so that they have more time to put in work to do that, to have a bigger impact? I mean, obviously, I don't think they should be obliged to do that. I don't think we should force people to, you know, stay around longer. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one. Like maybe that will be a question that's actually I'm confronted with in reality at some point in my life. I don't know how quick this technology is going to come around, but yeah, I could see myself using a technology like that. Yeah, just because I would want to be around to be able to do more good stuff. You know, not good stuff as in just like fucking go around eating cake and shit. I mean, like be able to actually have more of an impact on the world and, you know, make a better world for animals and also try to ensure that less sentient beings come into it.
This is one of the points where the discussion goes out into the weeds a bit, so I'll just skip ahead. Reasons why people think that they would want to jack off for thousands of years isn't very interesting. At least someone did bring up boredom and the fact that if you live long enough and see everyone and everything you loved be destroyed, immortality would be a curse. At this point, the moderator asked me a question that always seems to come up, aliens, and then it basically became an Ask the Antinatalist show, which I don't mind because this is what I was there for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Actually, this allows me, sorry, I have to. He brings up space travel. I have to ask our resident antinatalist. If we
Okay, well, as Mag says, okay, yeah. I mean, maybe I'd extend my life to help others, but I would also enjoy the cake part of it as well.
found life on other worlds, should we snuff it out?
Well, it's never going to happen, for one thing.
Why is that? Oh, we can get into that, but
Yeah,
never gonna
we know
happen.
abiogenesis only occurred once in the whole history of the universe that we know of. So all of us,
Yeah, we don't know much, right?
well, every plant, every animal, we all descended from that same bacteria that only replicated once. So life is more rare, I think, than anyone gives it credit for. We haven't found it on any other planets in the solar system. We can't reach other solar systems. So the only way we could discover them, of course, was through their radar or their radio waves or anything. But it's impossible right now for us to reach them. So there's nothing we can do.
What if it's something as simple as bacteria on Mars? You know, just under the under the frost, little teeny tiny
Well,
microorganisms.
yeah, the only problem would be that's not sentient, so who cares? But could it evolve into something sentient? Then that'd be a problem. Because people say that, like with the red button scenario. Okay, say we nuke the planet on all the different fault lines, cause global catastrophe, kill all sentient life. what if the bacteria survives in the next 4 billion years that the planet could be, or actually the Earth will probably, the atmosphere will probably be burned off in about 1.5 billion years, but could in that time life come back? You know, I don't think it could, because I think abiogenesis, however it happened, was incredibly rare.
So I gave Inmendum's standard reply to this argument, that life is more rare than most people suspect, and intelligent life, as far as we know, only exists on Earth. Then it got bogged down into how far radio waves can actually go and how accurate is the Drake equation, etc. Sticking around so that we can help some species that is more advanced than us go extinct is one of the harder to swallow natalist arguments. So then a student asked me an interesting question about how does someone become an antinatalist and why aren't there more of us?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why have you been able to attain this enlightenment, but most people don't share this?
Well, that's
belief,
like
if this is
what Zappa was talking about. It's delusion. You know, like I was saying to him, life is addictive. You don't really know why you love it.
how. Let me rephrase it. How were you able to break free?
Oh, I guess I've always been a kind of a depressive realist. And then when I was, like 12, I became an atheist, so I didn't believe in that delusion. I got that out of the way, so that helped. And then I got into something I look forward maybe to coming to the next time you're going to talk about overpopulation ethics and stuff. I think that kind of led me in antinatalism. I thought, well, this is stupid to bring someone into the world when there's too many people. And then that kind of led me to think, well, what other reasons? And then I discovered the ethics of it.
So it took about a half an hour into the discussion, but the question every antinatalist gets at some point came up. It's almost guaranteed.
Yeah, just before they get on to that next question, whatever that's going to be, it's sort of interesting, like, why do the specific people who become antinatalists, become that? And I don't know, it seems like I don't know if it's a pointless question, but I don't know if it's like the best use of time, just because how are you really ever going to know that? Like, we don't know half of this, we don't know half of the stuff about why people believe like the beliefs they do. Like, for example, you can show 5 people the same argument, documentary, bit of information, whatever it is, and 2 of them may be convinced by it, and the other 3 are like, what? And they just don't get it, right? So, like, veganism is a good example. There's take a documentary like Earthlings, or Garyofsky's speech, which isn't a documentary but a speech. Like, a lot of people found those 2 things like very convincing, but there will also be a lot of people who saw those 2 things and sure, it maybe gave them something to think about, but at the end of the day, it didn't really convince them to become vegan. Like, why? I mean, I don't know. Does anyone know? Does anyone know, like, why those specific people had their minds changed and the others didn't? And it's the same with antinatalism. Like, there might be a few things that you can point to and be like, that maybe made them more susceptible to it. For example, if someone has had a horrible life themselves, that's probably going to make them more susceptible because they actually understand what they could be putting someone else through. But there are a lot of people who have horrible lives who are very natalist. So how do you know? I don't know. But how important a question is this? I mean, if someone could research it, that would be like quite interesting and probably very valuable, but only if we actually do like proper research. Some random person in a discussion asking this, I don't know how useful our time it is. It's maybe better to get onto other things, but like, I don't know. I guess it's somewhat of an interesting question.
I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but given your stance, why are you still alive?
That's one of the most common things that antinatalists get. Is, why don't you just kill yourself? Well, of course, death is a harm. I don't want to hurt myself. I'm scared of dying. I have a wife. I have 4 dogs. I have a mother with Parkinson's disease I have to take care of. I have responsibilities. And also, I can't participate in antinatalism or veganism. I can't get people to stop eating cheese pizza and stop having kids if I'm dead. So to me, that's a good reason to keep going.
Why can't we eat cheese pizza?
It's immoral and unethical.
So it's not just that like the current human condition is undesirable. Would you'd go so far as to say like there is no conscious state that is worth trying?
Yeah, life is just a tragic accident. We should get rid of it. So like I think.
Life or consciousness, just.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, life, but I know we're talking about consciousness. I think this. But consciousness can be good, and especially for the animals, because we can be the bus driver, the good bus driver, and steer this thing into a graceful exit. So that way, it's a damn good thing we have it.
To the extent that we don't do that, and to the extent that you or anyone else would hold us morally culpable of what consequences then, what comes of the fact that we aren't currently shepherds of Armageddon.
Oh, what comes of that?
Yeah.
Just, billions more years of suffering.
I just have a question. I do want to know more about the line of reasoning.
Sure.
So what makes it so that essentially living is suffering? Could you just expand on that?
It's because of unfulfilled desires. So there is no.
Or possibly consider question number 7.
Yeah.
I guess we're all going to read it. Okay.
Okay.
Benedar posits an inherent asymmetry, and perhaps this is where you're going to go with to the presence of pain in existence, on the whole not a great thing, and the absence of suffering in non-existence, on the whole generally a good thing. So this is this asymmetry where non-existence is necessarily full of less suffering than coming out of existence.
Yeah. I just don't believe there's any positive in life. It's only negative. So like right now I'm feeling.
In this conversation.
Well, we're trying to fix the problem, and the problem is greater. So like I'm thirsty right now. You may think you're getting some pleasure by drinking some water, but really you're just trying to mitigate a pain. So you bring something into existence. They're just basically going to have all these unfulfilled desires that you're going to just need to try and fulfill them. There isn't anything.
Can I just push back a little on that? The pain that you might associate with thirst in its typical sense, as we have it in a developed world, cannot in any way be what you would put in the same category as suffering, is it?
Yeah, it's suffering, especially if it's
Is
minor.
that not to dilute the word suffering of?
Well, take that away from me for 24 hours.
Sure, but that's not what you mean by thirst in the normal, typical sense that everyone in this room experiences. I'm trying to say, like, I'm thirsty right now. I want to take a drink. I would never in any way associate that with suffering.
I think it's just people using the word suffering in different ways. I think like when in common parlance, when people talk about suffering, they more mean like a more of a visceral sort of experience that people have, But I think a lot of, at least when antinatalists are talking about suffering, we just generally mean like a negative experience, and that can be anything from being tortured, being lonely, to something as what is generally seen as trivial, like discomfort from day to day. If you like stub your toe, or you're hungry for a few hours, like these things, or like boredom. Yeah, MJ's put in the chat. Like these things are seen as relatively trivial, and in the grand scheme of things, like compared to other forms of suffering, they are relatively trivial. But at least when I'm talking about suffering, I include things like that. Just experiences that have this like negative valence, like they are negatively perceived by the experiencer. If is experiencer a word, I don't even know. But but I do understand why that could be confusing, because often, like in general discussion, when people are just talking day to day, suffering tends to be, it's referring to something on the higher end of negative experiences.
Yeah. I mean, you're only drinking because you have a desire to drink.
Sure, but I don't believe it's because I desire not to suffer.
The moderator was the one who pushed back against me a bit this time. This is the whole pinprick thing that Superhuman Dance and Inmendum have to argue about time and time again. Is a minor pinprick suffering? And my understanding is that yes, any discomfort is suffering. It's something that needs fixing. Again, I wish I could have explained this.
Yeah, it's just like with the whole pinprick thing, it was funny when I spoke to Johnny in my conversation with him, which is the one about like libertarianism and antinatalism. It was interesting because like he brought up the pinprick thing, or he brought up stubbing your toe, and I said like, oh, this is like the desert island thing for vegans. Like everyone brings this up to antinatalists and stuff, and it's like I get why people see it as ridiculous because stubbing your toe is such a trivial thing. But when you're thinking about creating someone, right, that person has literally no interest. They don't exist on any level. There is no one to have an interest to come into existence. There is nothing, they don't want these things that we would call positive experiences because they don't exist to want it, right? And so if they don't want any of this stuff, why would we just create out of nothing someone who is going to experience negative things, even if it's as small as that, when there was literally no reason to create them in the first place? And I think people, again, see it as ridiculous because they see it as such a trivial thing, but they don't realize, I think they don't get it into their head. They're not fully recognizing the counterfactual of someone never existing, which is just simply there's no one to exist to want the positive stuff. So you're literally this tiny stubbing your toe. Sure, it's a tiny negative thing, but why would you even put that on someone when that person literally is not going to stand to benefit from coming into existence? And I think as antinatalists, we can also recognize that, like, sure, if you create someone and all that happens to them is they stub their toe, which, let's be honest, in reality, that's not what it's like. But anyway, even if it was in some hypothetical world, sure, like, we still view it as a harm, but sure, stubbing your toe is a very small harm. Like, obviously that is not as bad as creating someone who is going to get cancer or something like that. Like, there are gradations to this. But the foundation is just, there's literally no point in creating that person for that person's sake. So why would you appeal to some vague notion of positiveness that they don't exist to even want to justify imposing even a small harm on them? It just makes no sense.
Better. Like when one guy said, well, I can drink water even if I'm not thirsty. Then I should have said, well, that's because you're bored, and boredom is suffering whether you accept it or not. The moderator then gets into the transhumanist argument, one that I have addressed a few times on this channel.
So there's a branch of negative utilitarianism called transhumanism. If you ever heard of David Pearce, he's kind of the big guy. He's a British philosopher.
David Hyde Pierce, actor from the 90s sitcom Frasier, yes.
Another guy, I think, but for one thing, it's not technically possible yet.
I was actually watching David Pearce had a conversation recently with Patricia, and I think you say her second name is Nonis. I did ask her once, but I kind of forget what she said. But she used to be known as that vegan lawyer, and I've had a debate with her on antinatalism before. But she had a conversation with David Pearce recently about transhumanism, but they did do a small section at the end on antinatalism, and I listened to that recently. And I was planning to do a response video. I haven't gotten around to it because I actually wanted to reach out to him first to clarify one thing. But yeah, I need to get around to it. I've just been so busy at work and stuff recently.
And there's no reason to say why that would be better than non-existence. It would be. Yeah, I mean, it's a better future for us for sure, and for the animals. I mean, like, not against it. I just think it's as good as non-existence.
I cut out a big chunk here of the discussion because it wasn't relevant, and anytime the discussion got into movies or culture, it took away from the main point. We talked a little bit about punishment ethics, and again, that wasn't the subject.
Because like I think of life sometimes as probably one of the greatest gambles in just everything. Because you may be born into a wealthy family, never had to really care about all suffering, all that stuff, do whatever the heck you want, or you may be born into like the shittiest situation in the world where you face constant suffering for millennia, who knows. But like in the end of the day, it's just a gamble. So why don't I just be born, take a gamble? If life sucks, I'll just opt out, and I'll spend the rest. I'm still gonna spend the rest of my life or rest of my non-life just as nothing, or like maybe like in a sensory deprivation tank, essentially kind of situation. So, what's the harm if I'm comparing just 100 years of
It's so dumb. It's like, okay, if you make that decision for yourself, sure, go ahead, like, have at it, Hoss. The whole point of antinatalism is that it's two people making a decision for a third person, you know, like
chance of maybe some hope or something good versus and either way, I'm going to be returning to this eternity of non-existence.
It seems like you took the asymmetry argument and you did it exactly the other way, and I disagree with it just as much this way.
All right.
I don't know, because as I understood it, like, the antinatalist asymmetry was, like, why would you bring something into existence when there's a risk of it suffering, in short, because the pleasure would,
Well, there's not a risk. There's a guarantee of death as well.
which might happen is
I think the risk that he's talking about, but I kind of think mischaracterizing, is this risk of like extraordinary suffering, right? That like there's like general people, and this depends on your. This will, you know, this will depend on your the country you're in, the position in society that you're in, a whole bunch of things. But there will be general groups of people that you can say, okay, like generally that group of people will probably have somewhat of, you know, this quality of life. But the risk argument is saying, yeah, you can notice these like general trends about the quality of life of different people and different groups of people or whatever, but those general trends are not guaranteed for the individuals. And so antinatalists saying those general trends aren't even acceptable. But even if you think they are acceptable, why does that give you a justification to create one more person who you think will fit into that general trend? But actually, they could be one of those people that's an outlier. And given that they literally don't exist to want to come into existence on any level, why would you take that risk on their behalf? Like, it's not up to you.
like it doesn't matter. But
I think my sense is like there were.
Seems like you just turned that around. You said the suffering.
Or not even take that risk on their behalf, because that makes it sound like you're doing them a favor. Impose that risk on them, should we say? I think that's a better way of framing it.
Doesn't matter. Why not just shoot for the off chance of having a good time?
Yeah, but are we basically saying that it'd be okay to have a kid because they can just kill themselves?
I'd say it'd be okay to have a kid because we're all gonna die either way. Like, literally, we all will return to like ashes or nothing or whatever. And if there's even the whole idea of like 1%, like a 0.001% chance of like something amazing happen, even if like that, let's just say that was not even the case. Like, why not just live for the heck of it? Just like maybe.
Well, I mean, just imagine.
Or just trying to leave the Earth in a better position so that way the next folks that occupy it have, you know, instead of a 0.001% chance of having something great happen, maybe they have a 0.002, and then they can turn
like
that into a 0.04.
That's one way to put it.
Actually, I mean, I know you were being glib, but is there not something to the notion that it is actually okay to condemn someone to life, to throw them into existence, given that they do have this ripcord, the ability to get out of it? It's unlike other prisons in that sense.
Well,
This is so, like, if people could just hear themselves. So you're putting someone into a situation, right? And you're saying, oh, it's fine to put them into that situation because at least they can kill themselves. Like, just think about what you're saying. Like, you're putting someone into a situation where the only way they can get out of it is by killing themselves. Like, do people not realize how serious a thing that is? Like, I don't understand. Like, whenever you hear about someone committing suicide, like it can get on the news. Like, it's very bad news for people to hear who knew the person, all of this sort of stuff. Like, it's a horrible thing for someone to have had to go through. And then you get natalists appealing to it as a justification for creating someone, and it's just baffling. Like, I don't understand. Like, imagine if if I just imagine myself, right? Like, if I had a kid and eventually one day they were one of the people that, you know, they came to me and they said, look, this fucking life shit is really not working out for me. I think I'm going to have to off myself. I've put that on them. That's my fault. Like, and what good reason can I come up with to like ease their burden? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Dog shit. Like, I don't see why people think this is an argument. Like, it's just so, and it's not even it's not even the fact that it's not a good argument. It's indecent as well. It's just an indecent thing to say to someone, like, oh, you don't like the situation you're in? Fucking kill yourself. Like, listen to yourself talk.
Fortunate thing, and I was going to bring this up during the prison thing, there is no right to die in this country, really. There's
at least 7.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing as well, is that we don't even have a way that people can sort of remotely, gracefully, like, exit this situation, right? Like, the ways that people have on offer to them is like fucking jumping in front of a train or off a building or some shit. Like,
States that have it.
if you have, I think.
It's mostly relegated to terminally ill.
Yeah, well, I think Oregon's one of the states, but
Sorry, my bad.
you have to have inoperable brain cancer and be in like stage 4 right before you die.
It's a pretty high burden.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a right to die, I mean, the only thing that would help your argument a little bit is if you could go to a suicide booth or whatever and put in a quarter and you're nothing. But we don't have anything like that. Any way to help someone who wants out.
We have pharmacies, we have cliffs, we have tall buildings, we have cars.
I mean, I know this guy is probably trying to be a fucking wise guy or something. He's a student, he's some undergrad probably, like, you know, fucking whatever. But the trivializing of, like, I think, like, you know, my sense of humor is pretty expansive, right? Like, I can find pretty, like, dark stuff funny. Like, I don't really find stuff offensive. I'm not, you know, how would you put it? I'm not a princess or whatever, however you want to put it. And I do think it's fine to make jokes about this sort of stuff, given a specific context. If you're in a situation where, you know, you're all antinatalists there or something, or if everyone there recognizes that what you're saying is not actually, you know, it's not a serious like thing you're putting forward. Like, we all recognize it's a joke. You know, comedy is a form of us all coping with our, you know, condition. But this guy is saying this, and it seems like he's kind of saying it in somewhat of a jokey way, but I'm not too sure. He might be serious. But, like, it doesn't come across the same way when he's making the joke, because he's not in that context. Like, he's actually perhaps making it as an actual argument. Like, he is one of the people, and he's surrounded by people who have or will be bringing people into existence and putting them in this situation. So it's, yeah, I don't know. Like, it seems distasteful when he is making the joke. I think if the same joke was made by antinatalists in a room of antinatalists, it would be different. But it was because we would all recognize that it's a dumb thing to say. And that would be the butt of the joke. The butt of the joke would be the dumb person saying it, not the person who's actually having to kill themselves. But this guy seems kind of different for him.
Internet, the dark web.
But you would tell your kid, hey, there's a building, go for it. Don't you see there's a little bit of an ethical problem with that?
Well, and I think there's a bit of coercion on your part as a figure of authority, saying you can do exactly what I'm telling you to do, or there's always a building.
But why bring that pain into existence? Like, killing yourself is a very traumatic thing to do, and why, when they don't have to exist in the first place, why even take that chance?
Going towards like minimalizing like suffering, right? Like,
yes, it's
you
very much so.
You don't get to commit suicide like in a vacuum. Right? It's great to, I don't know, have these thought experiments in which you do, and you can just pull the cord and no one is around you is ever affected by it. But like, it doesn't have to even be like the people nearest and dearest to you who have to deal with your suffering, right? It's like if you throw yourself off a cliff or you throw yourself off a building, right? There's just the other people
littering,
or like strangers who have to deal with the fact that you did that, and that's right, and it's traumatic to you, and it's traumatic to everyone who witnesses it, both like in the real life witnesses it and the ripple effects out there. So it's like, yeah, I guess in theory, like, oh, you can put someone into existence because, like, yeah, they have the choice to pull themselves out of it, but you don't get to do that without ripple affecting everyone around you in a drastically negative way.
So they made a good point to the Glibite that suicide doesn't just affect the person who kills themselves.
Yeah, that is a good point, because when people are created, they're put in this catch-22 where, you know, if they are in this unfortunate well, we're all in an unfortunate situation, but if they're in an especially unfortunate situation where they feel like they can't bear it any longer and they need to remove themselves from this, they're put in this catch-22 where, well, actually, if they follow their best interests, you know, and it is genuinely the right thing to do for them, you know, they're going to be harming others. But then if they want to put others' interests first and, you know, not potentially destroy the lives of other people, then they've got to carrying on with this burden, right? So yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22.
Look at Jaiwen Wang and how his death sent a ripple through the antinatalist community, and of course he had friends and family as well. I also like that the moderator called his comment glib, which it was.
In fact, you had mentioned a one-child policy, and I posed, you know, do you have a right to have a child? If we consider Ruley's argument, question number 12, concludes the best reason to procreate, you know, she considers all these arguments, is in order to experience the parent-child relationship, is what she had said is sort of the best possible.
This argument of like, oh, you know, a good argument is so that I can experience this thing. Like, it's talking about children like they're a fucking package holiday. Like, yes, you know, it's like, I'm gonna do this thing so I can have this experience and like go to the south of France and be on the beach and sip some like cocktails or whatever. It's like, a sentient being is not just this experience for you to fucking generate and just create on a whim so that you can experience this thing you want to experience. Like, if you want to experience like raising someone, then adopt. Like, I think obviously in adoption it should be the interests of the person you're adopting that should be foremost, but that can obviously still then, you know, it can still satisfy as an indirect thing your desire for experiencing to raise someone. But the fact that people think they can just fucking like, and just because they want, you know, and create someone just because they want to have this experience like some fucking package holiday, twats.
Reason for procreation, but adoption offers a viable and worthwhile alternative to procreation for those who want to parent. Adopting an already existing child does not make one complicit in the potential harms of procreation, nor does it add a new person to an overpopulated world. Instead of, if someone wanted to have a child in that case, must they be required to adopt first before making?
Oh, well, here we go. This is what I was saying, wasn't it? Like, yeah, I mean, if someone does really want to pursue that, and there are a lot of people that are, you know, and I used to be one of these people. Like, I was very much on that train. I'm still open to it now, you know, if I was in the right situation. But it's not really like the main thing that I want to do in life now. But yeah, I guess, yeah, they said it, so I don't really need to say anything more on that, do I?
Would that be sensible? Would that be disagreeable? Does someone have a right to have a child?
Back to the question of, do you have a right?
This is the thing, it's odd because that's an odd way of putting it. Does someone have a right to have a child? I don't think someone would be able to make that argument. It would be, the only way that I can see that really working is someone saying they have the right to bodily autonomy, and just as a result of that, because we can't intervene in, because they have a right to bodily autonomy, as a result they get to choose what they do with their body, and so it just as an indirect thing, just as a consequence, they then have the ability to procreate. Right now, obviously it's not as clean cut as that. You know, there are ways that obviously people have the right to bodily autonomy, but we can violate that. Well, I don't know if it would count as a violation, but we can override it given certain circumstances. So, for example, if someone breaks a law or is hurting someone else, they can be restrained, right? So their bodily autonomy can be impinged upon because they've done something. Now, someone could argue that would also be the case if someone decides to procreate. Then obviously they're, but I don't know. I don't think we should go down that road, because even though they are like doing that bad thing, I just think that's a dark road to go down when you start overriding people's bodily autonomy, especially with procreation, because it's been done before by certain regimes, and it doesn't go to good places, and it just leads to authoritarianism. And I don't think it's a good road to go down. I think the intentions may be good by these hypothetical antinatalists that are going to be doing this, but although they're not, like their intentions may be good, but we all know the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and it's a dark place to go. So I think we should definitely not go down that route.
To have a child, and now I'm thinking yes, because it's the independence of your body, right? Like saying no, you don't have the right to have a child is saying no, you don't get to do with your body as you please.
Right, but
it's this sort of same, right? It's like,
but you are using your body to hurt someone else, because bringing someone into existence, you're harming them.
Okay. No.
Fucking stumped him.
How about no? I disagree.
But you
bring
aren't
someone into existence to die.
Yes, you are actually killing.
Okay, so if someone murders my non-existent child, it'd still be my fault, because I set up the murder to happen.
Yeah, there's a video of Glynos talking about this where he says, if you're going to procreate and you know that the person you create, there's a chance of them getting cancer, if you create them and they get cancer, that's on you. I think the way that people view parental responsibility is very limited at the moment. I think it definitely needs to be expanded.
Yeah, and someone forged the bullet, right? There's culpability all over, but I think it's probably the murderer most at, for sticking someone in jail.
Well, I mean, when you have a child, they're going to die, so it's going to happen someday. So.
The moderator challenged my argument that procreation is the equivalent of murdering someone, and so-called accidental births are included because failing to get an abortion is letting the murder happen. That is, if abortion is available, of course. The moderator compares my claim with the idea of blaming the person who manufactured a bullet for a crime where the bullet is used to kill someone. There is an unethical practice called war profiteering, which is a real thing, and companies like Raytheon are culpable for the harm their weapons cause. But that comparison doesn't really work here because a manufacturer of bullets doesn't know the fate of the bullet. Yes, they know they are designed to kill, but they can also be used for target practice. Bullets are very useful for stopping crime, for killing intruders, for saving lives. A parent knows without any shadow of a doubt that they are imposing a death sentence on someone. So I think it would have made more sense for him to compare procreation to an arms manufacturer who makes a bullet specifically for a hired assassin with a specific target in mind. And if he really wants to compare it to procreation, the victim's only crime would be to just be born. Obviously, that's not deserving of the death penalty.
So what are the actual odds of getting consensus of antinatalism from that?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. I mean, people are coming around to it more, just like we've seen veganism increase a lot over the past even just 5 years. People are becoming more aware of climate change, that kind of thing, and recycling more. And so it's hard to say. I mean, I'd like to hope that more people. I mean, if I can just stop one person from having a kid, I think that I will have done something good.
But it seems like if you're antinatalist and then you die, like every antinatalist needs to go out there and convert a bunch of people, or else they all die, and then everyone's like, what the hell was that?
Right, but luckily...
Oh, that was a weird blip in history. Let's go have some kids,
Yeah, I mean... yeah, well, see, that's one of the worst...
The suburbs with me.
That's just one of the worst arguments I've heard for natalism is, I want my kid to be a Christian or a Muslim or whatever. They want their philosophy to live on, but philosophy is not inherited, You can teach someone a philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I don't know, this whole argument of like, oh, well, antinatalism is going to die out. Like, says who? I mean, it's been around for thousands of years, and remember, it was around for thousands of years. It sprung up, like, as far as I'm aware, it sprung up multiple times independent of each other, right? And this was in a time when the only technology that people had was either word of mouth or written in physical books that at the time were not that easy to transport, right? So it survived all of that in several different locations for thousands of years, right? And now we're in an age where information can be blipped from one side of the earth to the other instantly, and like basically like everything we know or all of the discourse about antinatalism is online. So this information is all like very easily accessible, right? So I just don't I don't buy this argument that it's going to die out, because ideas, sure, a parent can pass down an idea to their child, but ideas can also spread like wildfire, mimetically, right? Like through education, through people interacting with each other. So one example is like, if you take veganism as an example, like there are probably most of the people in the chat, if not all, are probably going to be vegan, right? How many people do you know who were born vegan? Like, but like, so me in my lifetime, I've met thousands of vegans now, right? Like multiple thousands. I can probably count on one, maybe two hands, the ones that were born vegan. So it's like, I don't get this argument. Like clearly information spreads, like brain to brain. Like we don't just pass, like stuff can be passed down genetically and like through the generations and certain proclivities and stuff. But like information can also spread like wildfire, just through education. So I don't really buy that, especially now we have the internet and how information is so easily communicated. If it survived for thousands of years when all people could do is like, if it survived when people were still shitting in bushes, like it's gonna survive now.
So I don't need to have kids to pass on antinatalism.
But I mean, so there is like a even if you're like more than anti-natalist, even if you're like anti being alive, like if you think that you would be better off to simply die right now, I don't know whether or not you think that, but there's still possibly like altruistic reason for you to.
So I'm just reading the chat a bit, and the thing I'm laughing at is Mag put in the chat, my parents are conservative Roman Catholics. Guess I failed to spread their values. That's funny. And Lenny said that during his research, he found traces of antinatalist thought in ancient Egypt, which is 2 millennium ago. Sorry, 2 millennium BC. So that's 4,000 years ago, right? If I'm not being an idiot. That's cool. And then Austin's put Life Sucks did this discussion years ago, just revisiting it, just like I've done a couple of streams where I've sort of gone back and watched some old content.
Continue on so that you can cut short other people's
lives. Well, make sure those lives never come into existence. Yeah. And that philosophy is called pro-mortalism. The idea that it's better to die sooner than later.
Sorry, pro-mortalism.
Yeah, the idea that it's better to die sooner than later. Like, it would be better for me to die right now, because I won't suffer anymore.
And why are they ridiculously wrong?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said earlier, that would hurt my wife immensely, my mother and my dogs and all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't convert anyone to veganism or anything. So.
But when you think about the alternative of having to drive home from Ann Arbor in this weather,
I know it's gonna suck. Yeah.
Wait, were we just talking like almost getting to the point of like by nature antinatalism almost sort of evolutionarily cuts itself out? Because unless there's this sort of threshold, I'm sure you could come up with some differential equation and figure it out.
You don't even have to. You're getting all fancy with it. You're just saying, of course, anything that's evolved to live, where the game of life is not going.
Right. But then there's some threshold where every antinatalist must spread their ideology to others for it to continue existing until the end of the species.
So the question was, will there ever be a consensus on antinatalism? In other words, will a majority come around to the idea? Of course, it won't require a majority, and as Mendham says, the most civilized countries are already in negative birth rate territory, so you could say some nations are already experiencing an antinatalist culture, even if they don't consciously know it. So as you just heard, some of them fell into the trap of thinking that philosophy is somehow inherited. I don't really understand this argument because just one antinatalist like Mendham or David Benatar could potentially spread the position into the future all by themselves. Not every antinatalist needs to be an outspoken activist. Or through
Yeah, and also it assumes that the thing, or the only thing that antinatalists want to do is convince individual people, right? But that's not the only form of antinatalist activism. Like, there are perfectly legitimate forms of antinatalist activism that someone can do that don't involve trying to convince individual people to not procreate and, you know, to overcome all of their biases and stuff. So even if this was a valid criticism, which I think like it isn't really, because I don't think it doesn't hold any water. But even if it did hold water, it would only hold water as a criticism for one form of antinatalist activism.
People can come to the conclusion themselves quite easily.
Question number 10. Emile Saron begins The Trouble with Being Born, this fine little tome right here. 3 in the morning, I realize this second, then this one, then the next. I draw up the balance sheet for each minute, and why all this? Because I was born. It is a special type of sleeplessness that produces the indictment of birth. And with this I ask, why might bouts of insomnia cause us to question our birth? Why might we question our existence or the existence of others when depressed and not when triumphant? That is, why do we consider, why am I here? To be or not to be, only when we're sad.
The moderator then reads question 10, which deals with Emile Chiron, and the idea that we contemplate the shittiness of life more when we can't sleep. I think that the answer to this is obvious, because sleeplessness is a common form of suffering, and suffering makes one more aware of how intrinsically life sucks. But let's listen to what people had to say.
I feel like I do literally feel thankful for existence, like when I feel something great and wonderful. Like, I don't know.
I think it's fair to say that when people are depressed, they think about whether they want to be here at all a lot more than when they're happy. Like, that's pretty. I don't think that's very controversial or far from true. I think that's kind of like a fact. Yeah, I mean, like, it's fair. It's worth questioning, but.
Yeah, I'll admit that the fact I'm a depressive realist. I mean, I've been on lithium, I've been on Prozac, I've been on Paxil, I've been on a few other drugs. And yeah, that does, I'm sure that had something to do with it, but although I hate when people use that argument against me and say, oh, well, only depressives, are antinatalists, but I think that just gave me insight.
Conversation was wrapping up here around the 2-hour mark, but then one of the glib people tried to make a utilitarian case for natalism.
Yeah, I just don't find that convincing. I mean, like, what are we going to do? Like, put slaughterhouses and McDonald's on Mars? I mean, what the fuck are we doing? We're not doing anything important. The only thing we can do is prevent suffering, in my opinion. So, I mean, there's no way to reach aliens, so just forget about that. So, what can we do here? And we can just, prevent more pain and death and suffering for the next billion years. And that's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that, like, the human race does go extinct and then the animals just keep on killing each other for another 1.5 billion years. That seems like the worst thing.
Hey, Matt. I just saw Matt's jumped in the chat. I've sent you some stuff on Instagram, so if you check Instagram out, and then you should have everything when we've finished going through this, and ready to get you on.
So yeah, that brings up the curious point of, like, how far do we go in imposing this? How far?
Yeah, I mean,
suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I was saying. Like, I don't know if we should just force people to have kids, but we can do some things like, just incentivize having less kids. Like, well, you're going to pay more taxes if you have more kids. You're not going to get more entitlements, that kind of thing.
Oh, but yeah.
Start small.
The animals, though, it seems like if we are taking the premise that life is bad, we should at least continue to exist long enough to be able to sterilize.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we should stay around. Like, we could start in the oceans or something. You know, I've heard different plans about this, like taking care of predatory species first. You know, because they cause so much harm to the herbivores and stuff. Yeah, I think that's a good goal.
Then someone makes the claim that it may be unethical to infringe upon wild animals in any way, and this is basically the vehement or the vegan environmentalist conservationist perspective.
The animals aren't consenting to be anti-natalist, is all I'm going to say. So,
It's
following
true.
like your frame of logic,
Yeah, this is the whole animal thing again is like a interesting like important and interesting like point of discussion, but I won't say any more now than I did before just because I'm going to do a video on this soon.
I'd say it's probably, even if I agreed with your frame of logic, I'd kind of say it's probably still immoral to...
But to be fair, I mean the question about animals is probably the most important question in antinatalism. Maybe there's a more important one that I can't think of at the moment, but yeah.
Get rid of, or to sterilize the animals because they're not consenting.
But is it moral? Is it moral to let them rip each other's faces off?
Yeah, like there's a non-aggression principle thing where they're causing harm to others or their future offspring.
Yeah, well, a
I mean,
philosopher.
then you're sort of considering it from their point of view, whereas I would say you directly taking the action of sterilizing them is something that you've done upon yourself,
Is
that
it
you've
something
taken that
about
choice.
letting them rip each other's faces off versus doing something to them.
Right, can't just
right? Is that
can't just let this happen. And
Why not? I mean,
Yeah, I mean if she's saying like, oh yeah, but you're just letting them rip each other's face off, you're not doing anything. It's like, well, okay, sure, yeah, we're not the one. I mean, well, first of all, like we are quote unquote like ripping their faces off in like factory farm. Well, not factory farms, just farms generally in laboratories. All of these places, like we are like abusing the shit out of animals. But even if you just look at wild animals, like, okay, sure, like this would happen even if humans never existed. Like we're not the ones like causing that. But I mean, does that make it okay to just stand by the sidelines and just watch it happen? Like if if I'm like walking in the woods and I walk past this this young child who is been like attacked by wolves or something, and is like all cut up, needs help, is thirsty, hungry, I didn't cause that suffering. Like I'm like, is it fine for me to just like walk past them and be like, looks like you've had a shit time, but I didn't cause it, so see you later? Like, no, clearly we should be helping others in need even if we didn't cause the harm.
Because whether or not you happen to exist or not, that was going to happen without you, so it's definitely not your fault or responsibility or burden.
So a philosopher, like, his name's in Mendham, he's on YouTube, and he has the good bus driver metaphor. I mean, like, do you want to just let a bus just drive all over the fucking place with no driver and just smash into everything, like basically what evolution has done? Or should we control it?
Why are you the driver?
Because we have the intelligence.
There's a requirement to justify supremacy, right? If we are having conversations about consent, to how, like, right? And
I mean, if you want to call it supremacy, like if like there was the earthquake in Turkey recently, right? Now, natural phenomena, like humans didn't cause that. Turkey is not the most economically developed country in the world. Other countries that are, more economically developed have been sending aid to them. Like, is that a form of supremacy? Just someone who is more able to do some good for another group of individuals who have come to some harm. Is that supremacy? Like, okay, but then someone might say, oh, okay, well, those people can give consent, to being helped because they're human, we can speak to them, stuff. Well, not everyone that was hurt in those earthquakes is human. There have been many dogs, cats, other, animals that we generally have as companions have been found in the rubble and been taken out. Like, they don't speak English or Turkish, right? Like, is that a form of supremacy? No, like, dumb point.
Lots of vegans make a claim of no human supremacy as as a premise. I don't take it that you do based on what you said here.
Well,
right?
I think
but like if for you to be the bus driver,
Yeah, or if you want to call it supremacy, then some supremacies are good. Like clearly, not all of them are good. There are loads of supremacies that are not good, and we've seen this in history. We see it today. But if you want to call that specific thing supremacy, then it's a good form, or it seems to me as a good form. If someone else thinks differently, then I'm open to being convinced. But
you have to have a justification for saying like we are taking the reins and that should be done. And so there is a claim of supremacy and subjugation in my mind at play there, if we can accept that some animals are sentient, or at least that like they are, right, like they.
Subjugation. So you have like some rabbit in the wild or hare that is suffering from some disease, and we can maybe inoculate that hare or rabbit against that disease so that they don't suffer from it in the future, or it's some sort of ailment to their suffering now. Is that subjugating them? Like
in this consequential.
Okay, well, like look at it this way. So I just kind of see animals as basically stupid or retarded humans. Basically, I mean, we all come from the same DNA. We're basically the same. So if you had a bunch of retarded people like in a room killing each other, shouldn't you step in and stop them, or should you just know? That's cute. Okay, just let it go. Oh, I can't violate their consent. I just gotta let them, kill each other.
As I mentioned earlier, these people were all carnists. They are fine with torturing animals unnecessarily to feed themselves, so of course they're going to reject the logical evidence that humans and non-humans are basically sharing the exact same life experiences.
It feels like as we're sort of progressing, I'm getting this perception of antinatalism as the ultimate anti-consent, you are basically putting this divine stature to your ideals and enforcing them at all costs because you're saying the end goal is to have no life.
Well, first I want to say that not all antinatalists believe that. Some antinatalists are purely human-centered, and they just think it's a very passive philosophy. Just don't have kids.
Right. Right.
But I think if you are an antinatalist, you have to consider the animals, in my opinion.
Should we just not imprison criminals because that would violate their consent to be free? Should we not euthanize an animal with half of its face missing to end its terrible suffering? So he's just trying to make a dishonest claim that antinatalism is playing God, when it's procreation that is doing so. The moderator asked us to speculate on how the world will end. This basically got into a mix of science fiction and doomsday scenarios, so it wasn't really on subject, but sort of interesting to talk about. I tend to side with Derived Energy, who foresaw nanotechnology and genetically modified viruses as taking us out in the next few hundred years. Someone asked me a question that I hadn't heard before, and that was, what is my opinion of the World Seed Bank in Svalbard, the Arctic island where Jaiwun Huang lived for a time?
Oh, I didn't realize he lived there for a time. That's interesting.
What's everybody's feeling on the seed vault?
I think that
it's a good idea.
Really get you going?
I think it's great to preserve those seeds just in case you might need them someday. I mean that
what? That makes no sense.
Well, plants don't experience pain, so
yeah, it's no harm in having those seeds. I mean, when the human race comes back, you want them.
So won't we prepare for the antinatalist Armageddon and have pods of embryos that have a lamb?
Well, I mean, it's
uterus
just.
and
I mean, you want civilization. I mean, basically, that's the idea of civilization gets wiped out. I mean, you want to bring civilization back, and you want to feed people and stuff. You don't want them to suffer. So.
Wait, but then isn't it the whole goal of bringing these things back to our benefit? I mean, you don't want them to bring back their benefit.
I mean,
so
I
that we
get what
can
you're
end.
saying. You don't want the population to blow up again, but
what?
I
But-
think
I
you
know,
can be
but you might as well
you
ease
can be
existence for the
against
people that still have to be here.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Like if nuclear warfare or whatever break out, right? Yes, we may not want overpopulation to swell and all of that, but you do. If civilization got totally wiped out, like no one could find food or anything like that, like it feels wrong to let those people die, right? So you want something to again, right? It's not the whole point is not just to exit; it's to gracefully exit and to ease towards the end.
This girl slash woman seems like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll speak to Matt later. Maybe he'll remember. Like, I don't know if she is like a like anti-natalist, but she seems like she's coming at it with more of an open mind than the others. Um, like some of the others seem to be like willfully misunderstanding.
Of a civilization rather than just have people, crawling over the finish line and suffering till the very end.
He for some reason thought I'd be against it because I would want the human race to starve to death. But as you heard, someone reminded him that we want the human race to have a graceful exit, not a sloppy exit. The moderator had one more question on his worksheet from Emil Saran, which basically said to just get over yourself, but it led to one person saying this.
It doesn't take much to kill yourself.
It does.
Sure.
It does. It takes a lot of courage. Yeah.
It takes more than you think.
Your body's own self-preservation.
Right. It's rebelling against you. Yeah.
That's fair.
And also, we didn't discuss this really, but Benatar in his book, Bear Never to Abandon.
Yeah, I'm. Blah, 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 blah. I maybe didn't catch that, but did that guy just say like it's easy to kill yourself? Like, I mean, how ignorant can you be? Like, okay, like, sure, in some instances, people may be able to find ways to do it like pretty swiftly and painlessly, but I don't see that being the norm.
I saw somebody had it here. Yeah, he talked. A big part of that is the optimism bias that humans have. They're biased to see things as having rose-colored glasses. They think everything is better than it really is, and that's one reason why they don't kill themselves or become anti-natalists.
I was about to bring up the opposite bias.
Yeah, people are way more
Pessimism
focused
bias?
on the negative. Because
Right,
you
like-
only die once, so we're like wired to pay attention to the bad a lot more than the good.
Yeah.
I don't think that's
Like, there's a reason
Yeah,
clickbait
like a lot,
news and
yeah.
stuff focuses on negative, because that's what gets people's attention and memory and focus.
This is, of course, coming from someone who has not read Benatar and doesn't understand that the optimism bias has been proven to exist in humans and in animals. What I should have done was poll the room. Show of hands. How many of you think you're going to get cancer and the cancer wins? I'd be surprised if any of them would have raised their hands, though the odds are that 1 out of 3 of them will indeed die that way. So they just use anecdotal evidence saying, oh, my friends are pessimists, or that the news seems to be pessimistic. You've all heard the phrase, if it bleeds, it leads in the news business. It's a business, and nobody wants to hear about what the most ethical humans did today. And they want to hear about what the worst humans and the most disgusting acts were. Just because many of us have morbid curiosity and like to engage in social pornography, it doesn't translate into being a philosophical pessimist. All the optimism bias means is that you don't think the worst things will happen to you. If people truly were pessimists like me, then they couldn't stand to watch the nightly news because the horror is just too real. And that's why I don't watch it anymore. It's because of their optimism bias that they get entertained by that shit. Because that will never happen to me or my kid. So I hope this video provided some food for thought. The experience did for me. One of the students came up to me and said sorry for counter-arguing so often, but his questions in particular were not offensive, and they can only help me strengthen my arguments. He also said that he will not reproduce, so that was great to hear. Only some of the glib comments irritated me, and I mentioned those. I've been researching and writing about this subject for years, and since for most of them this was their first time hearing about it, I thought they did okay. I was glad that there were so many young people there, because that's really antinatalism's target audience. If just one of them decides to find another hobby than reproduction, it would have been well worth it. I'd like to thank Barry Belmont and the U of M Bioethics Discussion Group for having me, and my fellow antinatalists from out of state for being there as well.
Oh, so there was another antinatalist there. Maybe it was that woman. I'll have to ask Matt about that.
As always, thanks for listening, and don't have kids.
Yeah, that was interesting. What did you guys think of that? Yeah, I need to remember. Okay, so now that I was gonna ask Matt about the happiness. That woman who was maybe also antinatalist, and also I wanted to ask about that student. He said came up afterwards saying they're not gonna reproduce. Like, was that as a result of the discussion, or had they, that was already their mindset, or whatever? But cool. Okay, so I think Matt has still been watching, so he should know that I'm about to try and get him on. So let's fucking hope this goes well, because this is the first time that I'm doing this like this. Okay, cool. Hey Matt, how you doing? I can't
Good.
hear.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I'm just gonna bring you up on the stream. So just so you know, like you will be on now. Oh no, wait, wrong screen. Okay. Now people should be able to see you.
I'm hearing an echo. Are you?
Have you still got the stream on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll be why. You all good?
Yes.
Okay, nice one. How are you doing?
Good. I think I'm going to change microphone because I'm hearing an echo.
Okay, yeah, that's all good. I'll
One
just
second.
talk. Yeah, just let me know when you're back. Cool. Okay, so while Matt is sorting that out, so let's see what people are saying in the chat. So while we're waiting for Matt to just change microphone, put in the chat what you guys thought about that discussion and if you've seen it before. So let's see what people are saying. I've actually got to go back a bit because I haven't really been looking at the chat for a while. Okay, I think people are just talking amongst themselves. Well, I can talk about some of the things that I've got like coming up on, well, hopefully coming up soon. Because I've been like I said, busy at work and stuff like that. So I'm hoping to do more of the Antinatalism Around the World series. So hopefully soon we've got an episode on Sri Lanka coming up. I'd also like there's a few other countries that. Oh, that's so weird. Did people hear that? Did people just hear a chicken or cockerel just go off? Let me know if you did hear that. Oh wait, I think Matt just called me. Did he call me? Matt, can you hear me? Matt, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a lot of background noise. And also,
okay, just a sec.
And I also can't see you. I don't know if you've not got your camera on. Okay, cool, nice. Yeah, and the background noise has gone as well. Oh, well, you're on mute, so maybe that's why. Do you think you're all good to go? Can you still hear me? Okay, maybe he can't. I don't think he can hear me anymore. Yeah, anyway, so that chicken thing. So that must have been like a bit random. So basically, you know how sometimes on streams when someone makes a donation, it means that like you can have an alert come up. So I didn't want to have people's like names and stuff come up on screen because some people don't like their name being put out there publicly and stuff. And I think a lot of like vegan like people like streamers and stuff will have it come up, but with antinatalism, because it's more of a touchy subject, people don't want that. So I thought I'd do a noise instead, but it hasn't been working up until now, and then just randomly that cockerel went off. Matt, can you hear me now? Maybe he's still. I think he's still figuring it out. Okay, cool. Let's see what people are saying in the chat. So, yeah, people are just saying that they've watched it a while ago. Yeah, no worries, Matt. If you can hear me through the stream and stuff, just keep trying and just let me know when you can when you figure it out. Actually, what we can do in the meantime is actually maybe watch another one of Matt's videos. Let me see. Let's see if okay, cool. Let's see. I'm thinking maybe let's try one of Matt's most recent videos, which I actually mentioned before, which is the I Am a Natalist video, which can people see that? So this one is, so Matt, if you can hear me, just I'll keep my eye on the live chat. Just message in the live chat when you think you're ready, and I can call you again on Discord, or you know, you can call me, whichever way. But cool. Okay, cool. So John's turned up late. Hey John as well, by the way. So John's asking who Matt is. So Matt is the guy who runs the Life Sucks YouTube channel, who we just reacted to his discussion with some college kids. And MJ's also said your channel is going to blow up when antinatalism gets more popular if you keep it up 100%. Thanks, MJ. Maybe that'll happen. Hopefully it'll happen so that more people will hear about it. I think antinatalism will become more popular. I think the main thing that's holding it back at the moment is just literally that people have not heard of it. So the more we get stuff out there at the moment, I think we can really get a lot of low-hanging fruit, because I think there will be a lot of people out there who will be sympathetic to it, but just haven't heard about it, right? And I was one of those people. Like, I wasn't one of these people who had heard about it for a while and was just resistant to it or against it. I had just not heard about it, and the first time I heard about it, I was like baffled by it. But then when someone actually explained it to me, sure, I gave some counter arguments and stuff because I wanted to see what the person responded, like how they responded. But like I just it made sense to me like pretty quickly. And I think there'll be a lot of people out there who are like me. And no. Is anyone? Okay, cool. All right, so this video, let me scroll down so people can see. So it's called I Am a Natalist, and if you can see, so it's a parody of a Netflix documentary called I'm a Killer. And well, I guess that's all you really need to know, to be honest. I don't know why I needed to scroll down for that. Cool. Okay. Let's have a look at this one.
Natalism is the prevailing philosophy on planet Earth. That's why I follow it and live by it. I'm a conformist. The nail that sticks out gets nailed down, as a Japanese proverb says. I prefer not to get hammered down. I want to do what everyone else is doing and never question it. My parents had children, and their parents had children, so I have children. It doesn't matter to me that there is no logical reason for doing it. It's better to do what the TV says to do. And this tells me, and this tells me, and they tell me. It's so much easier not to question. That's also why I eat animal flesh and encourage my children to do so as well. If I stopped eating meat, eggs, and dairy, then my parents would think I disapproved of their lifestyle. I don't want that. Animals may be tortured to death for my habit, but it's not happening to me, so why should I care? Eating animals helps me fit in better. And if I teach my children my same habits, then they won't be in a place to judge me. I like to pretend that I am superior to all other humans and non-humans on Earth. After all, if I were a plantation owner 150 years ago, I wouldn't question my superiority over inferior subhumans. It was written in the law that I was superior, so why would I question that? I would have my fun and be perfectly legal. I am lucky to live in a time when I can create sensitive, sentient life and abuse it with no repercussions. In fact, I've been thinking about becoming a polygamous Mormon and having 20 kids if I feel like it, and no one could stop me. Well, I can't really afford 20 kids, and that would make me a bit of a nail that sticks out too much, so I decided to stop at 3. It gives me that family man reputation that I like. If I ever wanted to run for political office, I would make sure to use my kids to show how good of a person I am. Look, I have 3 kids. I must be a good politician. I like that I'll never be held accountable for the death of my child, even though I personally set it in motion. I essentially committed premeditated murder and got away with it. But not only that, the thing about my crime is that I only light the fuse, and multiple crimes unfold over the years and decades. I have created biological machines that create more biological machines. My machines will reproduce into the future, hundreds or even thousands of new victims. The killing will go on after I am gone.
But yeah, you get what I mean by like Matt produces like very high quality stuff, and like so I haven't seen the original I Am a Killer, so maybe like there are some references that like I'm missing here, but I think just stating the behaviors that people partake in just because they are the cultural channels in which we live, but stating them so obviously and highlighting the fact that they are conformist, and also that they have victims is an interesting like way of presenting it, which I think, I mean, obviously I'm a biased party, it's going to resonate with me, but I mean, I think this would get people to, if someone actually did sit down and they either were a natalist or non-vegan as well, I guess, because he's included some vegan stuff in here. I think this is the sort of thing that would at least get someone to question. Even if they are, even if they have friction with the actual ideas and philosophy, they can look at this and be like, okay, I can understand why someone sees this and thinks, oh yeah, they're just like conforming, and not paying moral attention to the consequences of their action. There's a song actually, but I think I've brought this up before, but there's a song by Joy Division called Transmission, which, I mean, it would be cool if I could play this on stream, but I think it would get like copyrighted and stuff. But there's this song called Transmission by Joy Division, which the singer of Joy Division was Ian Curtis, and the lyrics that he wrote to this song are all about the capacity for human conformity, especially in the face of moral crimes happening, and the fact that this hinders moral progress. And he uses throughout the song this analogy of dancing to a radio, dancing to the songs on the radio, which it's good. Like, if you first listen to it, you may not get the message, but if you sit down and pay attention to the lyrics, and then maybe someone helps you out by saying, you know, how would you interpret this if you think about conformity? I think then it all slots into place, and you realize what he was trying to say. Yeah, it's a really good song. Well, it's a good song. One in the message. He was also just a very good lyricist. But also it's actually like a good song in terms of like music and shit. I'm not musical, so I don't know how to say this stuff. But
my gift of suffering will continue long after my death. It makes me feel immortal. If my creation displeases me, or if I'm just in a violent mood, I can strike my child across the face and slap their behind to my heart's content. I can deprive them of food and stimulation. I am their king, their pope, their God. I get to tell them when to sleep, when to wake up, when to jump, and how high. My child-free neighbors will be forced to pay for my creation's education, socialization, and daycare. I might use this free service provided by taxpayers, but they don't teach children about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ in school, so I may homeschool them instead. I can freely indoctrinate my pet human into nonsensical, unprovable credulity that will only harm them later in life. I know this, but my parents did it to me, so I will continue the tradition of faith over facts, logic, and evidence. If I was an atheist, I wouldn't fit in, so it's easier to believe in or pretend to believe in fairy tales. Why wouldn't I take advantage of the large number of extra rights and privileges I get as a parent? If I were a breeder of chimpanzees, I wouldn't be allowed to take money from my neighbor's paycheck to feed it. But if I breed Homo sapiens, I get to steal money from my child-free neighbors. They have no choice but to support my breeding program. Do you think I for 1 second consider or care about the real price tag of my fun? Fuck no! I understand and accept that my creation will have to deal with unrequited love, wage slavery, compulsory education, conscription, and taxation. I'm fine with that. The person I create will have to deal with the possibility of going to prison, being raped, becoming an orphan, being unemployed and destitute. I'm fine with that. After all, I'll be dead for half of their life anyways. My death will most likely leave a huge void in their existence, and I like that too. I want to be missed and to be worshipped. I want my child to cry over me and wish for me to live again. No matter what relationships I have in my life, this one that I imposed will be the one that I have the most control over. This person will never, ever forget me. I will make sure of that. I will be a good God. But if I'm not, if I feel like being a cruel God, well, you can't stop me. I can ruin my creation's self-esteem so easily. They will never measure up to me, I can make certain of that. I will work on it every day. I chose not to show my children in this video because I like to present a faux concern and vacant but righteous anger if anyone questions how much I care about my child's welfare. So I won't show them like those parents who profit off of their children on YouTube. They have a legal right to monetize their creation, which some say is questionable ethically, but not me. I'm a good parent. I just won't so blatantly exploit my child, just the traditional exploitation that occurs behind closed doors. Does that mean that I will have saved enough money to put my kid through college or provide them with a safety net in case there are no jobs in 20 years? Of course not! I don't even have enough money saved to pay for a single medical emergency. I have to put myself first. I earn my money, and
it's actually impressive how many aspects of this he's brought into it. You know, he's brought in the sort of ego trip of having control, or total control and domination over someone else. But he's also brought in the sort of disregard that people have, so that you're bringing another sentient being into existence, and a lot of people are they do not prepare their financial situation well enough to be able to adequately provide that individual with the things that they will need, that you imposed upon them to need, right? He also brought in a while ago about when he talked about chimpanzee breeding, the fact that like our political and economic system is set up in such a way that you can't really help but support this the institution, if you want to put it like that, of procreation. Yeah, he's really brought in a lot of aspects.
My money, not some whiny brat's money. I'll pay for their food while they're living with me, but once they're 18, they're not my financial burden anymore. I can legally kick them out on the street, and they can become society's problem. That's why we have taxpayer-funded police, courts, and prisons. They will take care of the giant sloppy shit I took on the world. My child can live in jail or a homeless shelter if they can't figure out this conformist life game. And I'm fine with that. It may make me look bad to have a child in prison, but I can also use them to gain sympathy for myself. If my child is killed violently, then I'll get even more sympathy and attention. Yes, I'm the one who created the victim, so really everything bad that happens to my child is my fault. But when the bad things happen, I actually get positive attention. I can go on TV and say, "No parent should have to bury a child. They're supposed to bury me." And people watching will say, "Oh, that poor parent. It's not their fault." Essentially, I have a glib, creepy indifference to the suffering of others. That is why I eat eggs and cheese and feel no pangs of guilt or remorse, or entertain even a thought about how that food was made. Animals are indifferent. I'm an animal. Therefore, I should be indifferent. Benjamin Franklin said so when he broke vegetarian and went back to eating meat. So, I'm in good company. Vegan, atheists, anti-natalists are the ones in the minority. My philosophy is the dominant one and has been for thousands of years. You are the weak, pitiful minority. Your ethics are repulsive to us, the breeding majority. How dare you judge me for doing what I am legally entitled to do? Might makes right to the simple-minded, and I'm happy to live in a simple-minded world of unlike.
Okay, cool. I think we have Matt ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put up a holding screen and I'll get Matt on, and I should be back in 30 seconds with Matt. So I will see you in a minute. Don't go anywhere. So, welcome back. I think everything's right, so people should be able to see Matt. Just let me know in the chat if people can't see Matt or hear him or anything. But how you doing?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hopefully people in
my
the
video
stream.
is shit. I don't. This is so embarrassing. Like I had my good microphone, my good camera all set up.
I will. Yeah, no, I mean, it actually is your camera still connected to your computer? Your good one?
No, I can't get it to work, so I'm trying to use my
Okay.
laptop.
No, it's all good. Um, yeah. Anyway, so moving on from technical stuff, how did your move go? Because I think you mentioned it in like a community post recently, right?
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's a big change, going from Michigan to Colorado. It's I'm a mile up in the air now, and it's just a totally different environment, semi-desert, and I don't know anyone here, so it'll take a
Yeah.
while to get used to.
No, I get what you mean. So I mean, I don't know how much you're going to remember from the discussion like 3 years ago, um, but I had like I had some questions that I'd already prepared. I've got some from some people in a little Discord that I've got. And then I also thought of some off the back of the like when I was actually just watching it just now, and I wanted to do those first so that I don't forget. And like so right at the start you were talking about happiness, and I'm definitely going to misquote you here because I can't remember what you said like word for word, but I think you were talking about like how basically you value suffering way more, obviously. It's just it's much stronger of a moral currency if that's the way that someone wants to put it. And I completely agree with that. Like I think the important thing, especially given the situation that we're in now, currently, just with the fact that, like just reality is just so fucked. Like reducing suffering is by far the most important thing we can be doing. But what like how do you see like happiness and fulfillment, or however someone wants to put it? Do you see it as like an important endeavor to try and encourage that, or do you sort of just leave that by the wayside?
You mean like self-improvement and that kind of thing?
Yeah, or like if someone wanted to commit time to making the world a better place, quote unquote, do you think it's a worthwhile endeavor to focus on bringing up happiness rather than bringing down suffering, or do you think we should really be focusing just on bringing down suffering?
Oh, I'm negative utilitarian, so I think suffering, because one example I would use is, if you're walking through a park and you see some guy feeding pigeons on a bench,
Mm.
you don't have to masturbate him or something. That's not going to help the world any, But if he's there bleeding out and an animal's
Yeah.
eating his leg or something, then that implies that you should do something.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean, and like, because I think like once someone exists, I think it is. I get what you mean, because like often the ways that I think that we should be in, like trying to improve people's happiness, actually often when I think about it, it is just ways of alleviating suffering, really. So yeah, I like I probably in by and large agree with you, and I think there's this toxic form of a lot of people, especially with like traditional utilitarianism, when they don't just focus on reducing suffering, but they really want to promote what they call like well-being. um there's this sort of really toxic form that I've come across, or at least I view it as toxic, where they value like quote unquote generating well-being so much that they actively want to bring people into existence towards that aim. And that to me makes completely like no sense at all. Have you come across people who are they like I've met people who generally are antinatalist, but they think if we get to this sort of transhumanist utopia, then actually we should be actively bringing people into existence. Have you ever come across people like this?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's actually one of the main reasons parents say, they want to give the gift of life to people, because their life they think was pretty good because of their
Yeah.
optimism bias. They don't really realize how bad their life actually is. Um, yeah, so they're just totally mistaken about life, and that's the thing. Like, it's just it's a lot like the God delusion. It's the life
Mm.
delusion. They think that's a good thing when it's really a horrible thing.
Yeah, and I like I think so. Amanda told me this sort of line once, but I think originally she got it from watching an Amendum video or something, where it's like, uh, you know, like why create needs for no need, especially when we exist in a world where when you create those needs, a lot of them aren't met, and the ones that are met very inefficiently often, and also at the expense of someone else as well. And that just makes like complete sense to me. Like it just seems so pointless to be constantly churning out these new like sentient beings for them to experience something that they literally didn't exist on any level to want in the first place, especially when you think about all of that comes at the cost of the fact that they're going to experience suffering and risking like massive amounts of suffering that they could come to if they have some sort of if they have like really bad luck. um yeah, but anyway, going on to the like the conversation you had with the college students, so like where did that well, actually, you said where the idea came from, right? You got an invitation to do it.
Yeah, so there used to be my only experience with Discord, and I apologize to the viewers. I was having problems with this. I didn't know we were going to use it. It was called the Rogue Philosophy Discord, and it was a really great community. I don't think there's been anything that can replace it, at least at this point. I know there's other Antinatalism Discords like yours and others, um, but it was really cool. Like there's a lot of talk about veganism on there, but then a accounting guy got a hold of it and didn't want to give utilitarians a voice, so he closed it down. But anyway, someone posted this, and I'm so glad they did because it was right near me. I think people just scrub the internet for the word antinatalism, and so they posted it. And I was like, oh, I have to go to this because I would be a fool not to. I mean, it's only 15, 20-minute drive from me.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I showed up, and then another guy from Texas. The moderator said, you didn't drive all the way up here from Texas to go to this thing, did you? He's like, well, I have a relative in Detroit I'm also staying with, but I think he really came up for this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that he's not on the recording, but it was 2 hour discussion, and I didn't think people would want to watch that whole thing, so I really trimmed it down, and I had to, eliminate things like people's names and
Yeah.
stuff. And so I emailed him, and I'm like, hey man, you said a couple of good things. Do you want me to include you in my final cut of this? And he never responded. So I said, okay, man, I'm gonna take you out just for time. I really wanted to stick to the counter arguments people were having for
Mm.
antinatalism. I think that was the best stuff. Yeah, it was cool that he was there. I talked to him a little bit afterwards, but I haven't talked to him since then. I'm sorry, did I answer your question? Yeah, oh yeah. So yeah, so it was cool that someone found out about it, and I'm just glad I made it. Like the University of Michigan, it's fucking huge.
Yeah.
It was kind of hard for me to find it, but I got there on time. And yeah, everyone was eating cheese pizza, and they thought they were being all ethical for that. And like you guys know, cheese tortures animals more than meat does.
Yeah, I know. It's just like when you mentioned that right at the start, it's just like ethics 101, and it's I don't know, it's kind of embarrassing that these people have not. I don't know. I mean, I try to be somewhat sympathetic because like I used to be in that place for 20 years as well. I didn't make the connection, but to be fair, I was a child for most of that time. Like as I rate, like after I reached adulthood, I pretty quickly picked up on the fact that it was wrong to like fucking abuse and fucking kill like sentient beings for something as trivial as a pizza. But yeah, I don't know. I like often when I hear people talking about it, I just kind of but feel embarrassed for them. There was a woman on the recording as well who seemed like kind of sympathetic. I don't know if you like how much you remember of all of the people there and like who was on the recording, but do you know who I'm talking about? There was like I mean you do.
Yeah, she was. So this I hadn't been on a college campus for a very long time, and she was the first person I'd ever met who introduced herself with her pronoun,
Oh,
which was
really?
they. Yeah, and I've never heard that before. Now I know it's kind of common.
Yeah.
that was my first exposure. So that's why I remembered her. And she had hairy legs, so she was really trying to do the, not male, not female thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, she was the only one. I don't think she was antinatalist, but she was the only one who seemed to get the arguments. So yeah, I had to keep her on because I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, because I was getting the impression that like and I said when I was like reacting to the conversation, everyone else kind of and this is kind of expected, like everyone else seemed I don't know what the best way to put it is, like they're sort of just like, I don't know if this is offensive to monkeys, but like their monkey brain got turned on and they were just like, oh no, I have to fit against this. But she kind of came across as, like when some of them were putting up dumb counter arguments, she would actually say, oh well, actually, like I don't think, even though I'm not sure if she was antinatalist or maybe she is now, but like I think she was putting herself in the shoes of someone who actually was, just to try and think through it.
Yeah, I think she was being logical.
Yeah. How much sort of like I know we wouldn't have got like the impression of the whole conversation, obviously, because we only saw a snippet of it, and obviously we're getting you said you included mostly the counter arguments, right? So we maybe wouldn't have gotten the bits where people were more sympathetic. Like, what was your general feeling from the conversation? Was it your typical sort of level 0 natalist bullshit, or were people relatively like receptive?
Yeah, I think when I initially did my preamble, they were shocked, like they'd never thought of this before. Um, and I think someone's name came up. That's why I cut this part out. But the guy sitting next to me was like, "Holy shit! I didn't know this is what we were talking about." And what's interesting about this group is it was college kids, but it was also open to the public, obviously, because I was there. So there's a guy who brought his kid, and I think that's great that he's exposing his kid to philosophy and all these important social issues. So every week they do like a different topic, like
Mm.
overpopulation or something. And he was obviously scowling at me the whole time because he was a parent, like he just wasn't buying it.
Yeah.
But he was at least respectful of my time and didn't, interrupt me a lot or anything. But yeah, it was, I could tell Barry, the moderator, was I assume he has kids. I didn't ask, but he thought very negatively. He didn't like what I said about his pizza. You know, he was not buying it.
What was the do you remember the kids' reaction? You said that one of the guys brought a kid. Did they have any like any input at all, or were they just sort of sitting there and
Yeah, he was pretty young. I can't remember if he tried to argue or not. I don't think he did.
yeah, because I can imagine, like, you know how like a lot of, not every kid, but like a lot of kids, they sort of ask questions that adults don't think to ask because they haven't, I guess especially younger kids, they haven't been fully indoctrinated yet, right? So they kind of question social norms a bit more than, once we're older, it's sort of like the social norms and the ethical norms, it's sort of like the water we swim in, so we don't really question it, whereas for a kid they're still sort of figuring it out. So it'd be quite interesting actually to like talk to a group of, I don't know how someone would put this together, but like to actually talk to a group of maybe primary school level kids. I think that's elementary school in the US. And see what their reaction would be, because I mean, I would think it would be pretty different from adults, just because adults, like, they tend to try and like say things that they think sound smart but fall on their face, whereas I think with kids they would just be more like curious and ask a lot more questions rather than try to come up with dumb excuses.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be even better than getting to people at the college age.
Yeah. I got a few questions from other people because I collected a few before well, like when we were planning this, and I won't share their name just in case they don't want people to know that they asked these questions. But so did you show any of your art to, because you create, for anyone that doesn't know, you create a lot of art, right? And I think, do you create primarily like drawings, or do you do any other forms of art?
I mean, I do computer animation also, so I'm like working on a computer animation project right now, and that's how I earn my living.
Mm.
So that's probably the kind of art I've done the most of. I mean, just hours and hours of content there. Um, I didn't show any of my art to these people though. There just wasn't really time. I think I
Yeah.
mentioned that I was an artist activist, and I thought about sending, the moderator my book, but I don't know. He just wasn't very receptive to it, so I didn't
Yeah, yeah.
bother.
Oh, actually, another thing that I thought of while like right at the end, you mentioned that one of the students came up to you afterwards and said that they weren't gonna procreate.
Yeah.
Was that as a result of the conversation, or were they, they just weren't going to anyway?
For some reason, I think he was probably more receptive to it. But yeah, that was surprising to me. I think it was part of the discussion. I think he really, um, I think he got it. You can't escape the logic.
Mm.
And he also wanted to talk to me because he noticed that I lift weights, so he wanted to talk to me about being a vegan and training with weights. He's
Mm.
like, can you actually train and build muscle if you eat vegan? And I'm like, oh, absolutely. And so I have another channel where I talk about weight training. So
Mm.
it was cool that he was interested in both topics, veganism and antinatalism.
Yeah, that's kind of cool that at least one person like picked. I mean, maybe it was the pizza comment. Maybe it was the pizza comments.
Right. Yeah, because they didn't think about it. They just didn't think about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What would you recommend? So like going and like talking to people on the streets is something that like I'm interested in doing in the future, and I'm sure there are groups like Stop Having Kids, but talking to students at an organized event in a university is, I think, somewhat different, right? Because like, one, it's an organized event, so you've got the selection bias of like people who are actually going to be interested are going to be going there, but also it's a place of learning, right? It's a place where you're supposed to be sharing ideas, especially like controversial ideas that people are sort of divided on. So you would assume it's going to be a place for more fertile like ground for conversation, and that's definitely something I want to do in the future, and I've like heard from a few other people that they want to do it. Do you have any like recommendations for, or like tips or anything that you've learned from your conversation with these students that you would want to like give to another antinatalist who was going into the same situation?
Um, well, I was inspired by Gary Yourofsky to talk to college students. He said they're the most receptive people to the message, so he didn't really waste his time with any other kind of
Mm.
lectures. He just thought that was where you want to go. Uh, and not that there's anything wrong with street activism at all. I would say just be prepared. Like I really prepared for this,
Mm.
and I wrote down a bunch of notes because I would probably go over a book like yours, the Antinatalist Handbook, to see all of the counter arguments people have. So I'd recommend reading that. Maybe read a little bit of Benatar. Watch some antinatalist videos. Maybe that road to antinatalism that you recently covered.
Yeah.
Those kind of things I think would be a good idea to prepare.
Yeah, no, I was actually emailing with someone recently because they were thinking about going and giving a talk at maybe a local university. And for anyone that's watching, if they want to give a talk at a local university, I would definitely recommend contacting like either. I think there are three societies that generally tend to be receptive: is a debate society, philosophy society, or vegan society. Those three, I think, would be relatively open to having something on antinatalism.
Yeah, that's
Um,
actually a
mm,
great point because one thing Gary Yourofsky did before he went out on his mission was to study argument itself. Not any particular subject, but just
mm.
how to argue. Read some books on that.
Yeah, 100%. And when I was emailing with this person, one of the things I said was, because I've done some public speaking myself, not on antinatalism, it was on veganism. But there was a period where I was speaking quite regularly at different universities, and one thing that I found is like it is really good to prepare beforehand. But one thing you need to do is just start doing it, like book your first one and get experience, because
Yeah.
like knowing all of the arguments and sort of learning how to rebut them and stuff is important, but it doesn't really mean anything if you get flustered when you're actually there, which everyone is going to be. Like, I'm sure you maybe got flustered at this, discussion in some points. And like, I definitely got flustered so many times when I, had a new question pop up or something. But it's just going there and being able to, like, just get used to that environment is like super useful, especially if you're going to a university. Just
Yeah, I
quick.
just want. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I just
sorry.
wanted to say, do you have an organization called Toastmasters in England?
I know the organization you're talking about because someone's spoken about it to me before. I would assume yes. I've not like interacted with that organization at all, but I've heard about it. I would assume it's in the UK as well. Yeah, but do you
Yeah,
want to maybe yeah.
I just wanted to say that's another thing people should seek out. There's these, it's basically free, and I used to do this in college. I go to the Toastmasters, and you learn public speaking basically, and you get lots of tips and feedback. I mean, it's just a really fantastic resource.
Yeah, I heard about it because I knew some people that had like used it, and they really bigged it up as well. I actually quickly wanted to, while we were on the topic of Gary Yourofsky, not specifically about himself, but just about animal rights stuff, because I have actually only really seen your antinatalist stuff. But have you done much animal rights stuff over the years? Like, have you done any sort of activism before, or have you done any videos that you'd want to point people to?
Yeah, I did some. Unfortunately, they have my real name on them, so I probably don't want to share them. But I
Yeah,
did
yeah.
quite a few. Did a lot of vegan documentaries. There was a vegan restaurant in near me, and I became friends with the owner because I'd meet her at vegan gatherings
Mm.
and farm sanctuaries. And told her I was a videographer, and I'd be really happy to make a couple videos for her. So yeah, so I did those videos, and it was to promote her business, but also to promote the sanctuary and animal rights. And I like how she combined the two. Like her restaurant is, of course, aimed at health. It's vegan food and gluten free.
Mm.
So, but she's also very into animal rights, and anti cruelty. So she's someone I liked hooking up with and working on projects with.
Yeah, yeah. And what did you like volunteer regularly at the sanctuary you were talking about, or was
I did. I
yeah.
did. I mean, it was about an hour drive for me. So I would only go like once or twice a year, but yeah, I'd really enjoy going there and just supporting them financially a little
Mm.
bit, um, and telling more people about the sanctuary. I think helped, and I wanted to get more involved in it, but it was just I just didn't have the time to.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I don't know if you've looked into it, but it would be cool if there was one near where you are now, because I sort of like the only sort of animal rights stuff, because I don't know, volunteering at a sanctuary, I consider that a form of activism, because it
Yeah, I do
is,
too.
yeah, it is still helping animals, like ones that exist here and now, and um but yeah, like I used to do a lot more like street outreach or going onto farms or different forms of like activism, but um the only one I really do now is volunteering at a sanctuary and like organizing trips fairly regularly there. Like, I go at least once a month, and yeah, you probably got the same sort of thing, but like I was just kind of tired with interacting with non-vegans and dealing with like all the
Yeah, I bet.
bullshit. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed going to a sanctuary because like there's so many aspects to it. Like, you get to be outdoors, and usually you're doing physical work. Like, it's nothing like super tough, but you're still like getting your body moving and stuff, which I enjoyed more than just, I don't know, like talking to someone. But also you get to see animals just being at peace or enjoying themselves, whereas most of the time we just see them, getting fucking abused the whole time. So it's actually nice I actually enjoyed seeing them just being themselves rather than being abused. Um,
Oh, I totally agree.
yeah.
And being around compassionate people makes you feel good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when you go to a sanctuary, you're basically guaranteed to be around. I mean, sure, there's a few dickheads that go and stuff, but like most of the people are there because they are compassionate people. Um, Cool. So back to some of the questions that people put in. So I've got, I think, well, one here which I think is maybe like a bit of, I don't know if you'd consider it pushback on you, but so one is, so you talk about considering death a harm and like a bad thing in your discussion, but you also talk about the red button scenario, or however you want to put it. And this person is asking, do you think it's possible to sort of how do you sort of reconcile these two things? The fact that you see death as like a harm, which I do too, but also you're willing to sort of, you know, I mean, I don't think this hypothetical situation is ever really going to come to fruition, but in this hypothetical situation, push that button. How do you sort of deal with that in your head?
Well, I think violating someone's consent is less of a problem than ending suffering. So even though I wouldn't want to violate someone's consent because, you know, like Benatar says, it removes all future preference satisfaction and, you know, pleasures or things they want to do with their life. But, you know, if everyone died instantly, then it just wouldn't matter anymore, you know. And I mean, it'd all be over. There would be no preferences that need satisfying. There'd be no needs that need to be taken care of. So it's just such a win to prevent all those beings coming into existence that I can't logically out argue that it'd be better to shut off life if you had the option.
Yeah, like the way I see it is like, and I haven't spent like an amazing amount of time thinking about this specific scenario because I just think like we're never going to be in this situation, and it's interesting to think about, but I'd prefer to think about more like practical things. But the way I see that specific scenario is just like it is the lesser of two evils. Like it's still bad that we're in the situation where we would, you know, where that would be the better thing, but you know, it's just it is the lesser of two evils. Actually, the next question has just prompted me to like think of something else. So in the discussion, you spoke about what do you call it? You spoke about two things: antinatalism and ethylism, right? Now, you spoke about antinatalism and kind of referred to it in always like anthropocentric terms. And then when you spoke about more centriocentric stuff, you then pivoted to the term ethylism. Now, for me, I just kind of consider antinatalism centriocentric anyway. How do you distinguish between the two things, and why do you use the extra term of ethylism to talk about centriocentric? Is there a specific reason behind that?
Yeah, so I also believe that antinatalism is centiocentric as well. But that last video you're playing of mine, the I am a natalist, I got a lot of comments from meat eating antinatalists, you know, who said, hey, by the way, you can be a meat eater and an antinatalist. And I just disagree personally. But I think it goes back. The reason the term ethylism exists is because, you know, in the 1940s, the word vegetarian meant, I mean, it should have meant eating no animal products. You know, that vegetarian means no milk, no dairy. Those aren't vegetables. But so, you know, I know this movement started in England. I'm sorry, his name's escaping me right now. Whoever started
I
the
think
Vegan
Donald
Society.
Watson, is it? Donald Watson?
Okay. But he was like, you know, I don't want to be associated with these cheese and egg eaters because they're causing suffering. So I have to start my own word. And so I consider him starting the word vegan. It's kind of like Emendum starting the word ethylism. He's like, I just need a term that is specifically centiocentric because these meat-eating antinatalists are giving it a bad name.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I think you've been like involved in the community longer than me, so I think maybe you've been like worn down, because most of the people I interact with are vegan antinatalists, so I don't think I've been like worn down to the point where I've felt the need to have like a distinguishing term. But I can appreciate that other people, you know, they feel that it's necessary to have like a distinct term.
Yeah, I still use the term antinatalism. Like obviously, I called my coloring book, the ABCs of antinatalism, not the ABCs of effilism, because antinatalism, it just is the term. We're stuck with it whether you like it or not, and it
Mm.
is the general umbrella term for this philosophy.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think, like, to be honest, one of my sort of intentions is, and I mean, like, I don't know if I'm going to be successful in this, but like one of my intentions is to try and draw more of a link between veganism and antinatalism, because it is just bizarre to me that there are non-vegan antinatalists.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, well, I mean, it's bizarre to me that there are non-vegans, but that's another
Right.
fucking, yeah. But yeah, so I'm like, and hopefully as that becomes more common, um, people will feel less of a need to have like a distinct. Do you get what I mean? Because I think it's sort of like wanting to have a separate word comes from a sort of, I guess, sort of however you would call it, like intellectual protection. Sort of, you want to sort of protect this idea and not have it watered down by other ideas, and so you want it to have a distinct term, if you get what I mean. Because if we have one label and too many people jump on it, it then just often becomes, yeah, and which has kind of happened with the term vegan as well, because a lot of environmentalists have jumped on it, and health people as well, and obviously those are both good endeavors, but it's kind of distracting from the core sort of ethical principles of it.
Oh yeah, totally true.
Mm.
You just have people saying they're vegan when they're not even. You've seen all these YouTubers, and celebrities who go back to eating meat like that, and
Yeah.
freely always says, they were never vegan to begin with, really.
Yeah, and you have Cosmic Skeptic recently who
Oh yeah, disgusting.
yeah, I know. It's just like, but we don't need to get into that, because I've met the guy, and when I met him, he seemed, like a perfectly nice guy, and I'm sure he is a perfectly nice guy. And I don't think we know the whole story. I'm sure there was a bit of sort of cuckery going on with Michaela Peterson and stuff, but yeah, I mean, we don't have to get into that. So I wanted to quickly ask like one final thing. And the main reason this is going to be the final one is because my laptop is about to die, because I don't have enough ports to be able to have my charger in at the same time as streaming.
Oh, okay.
So what and obviously don't share anything, that don't feel the need to share something just because I'm asking. Like if you don't want to share anything, then just tell me. But what are you working on anything for the future in terms of your YouTube channel, or anything else like antinatalist related that people can like look forward to?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm always thinking about it and working on something in the background. Like that I am a natalist video. I spent
Mm.
months kind of writing that. Just off and on. I'd pick it up again and be like, can I consolidate this more? Can I make this um, simpler and that kind of thing? So it was originally going to be like a 20-minute video, and I'm like, no, I'd really like it to be 10 minutes. So it took me a while to write that, and then when I made the video, like it just went super quick because I'd been having it in my head all this time.
Mm.
And I made that video just because I hadn't made anything in like a few months, and I'm like, well, the subscribers are going to forget about me if I don't make something. Um, because I was really busy with this move. Like
Yeah.
it was over a year in the making to get out here. Um, so yeah, I'm working on a few book projects actually. Um, I guess I don't want to say too much about them
Yeah.
because like I'm collaborating with other people. So I'm pretty excited about those projects. I'm trying
Mm.
to do something a little bit more than YouTube videos,
Mm.
just to spread myself out more. And someday my channel could get deleted by Google, so I need to make things that exist outside of YouTube.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. And I think a book is actually a decent endeavor, because I was speaking to a friend recently, and yeah, I'll say this pretty quickly because my laptop is going to die soon. But I don't know if you've seen the recent story about Roald Dahl. There's been a sort of effort to change his writings to make them more, I don't know how you want to say it, like politically correct for the modern sort of audience.
Okay.
And I was speaking to a friend about this, and he was saying that one of the really valuable things about having physical books is that once you've got them, people can't change them.
Exactly.
And given that we are living in an age where a lot of the information is controlled online, and there's a concentrated number of people who have a lot of power and decision making over, who gets censored and who doesn't. I think creating some antinatalist books that can be physical, or, I don't know if you intend for yours to be physical, but like,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, yeah, I think that's a really worthwhile endeavor because, once it's in writing physically, then, it can't be altered in the same way, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, and you can you can physically hand it to someone.
Yeah. Yeah. But cool. Anyway, my laptop is gonna die, but it's been like really nice to have you on, Matt. And sorry for the the technical issues and stuff. And but I'm hoping to do another stream soon, which I can talk to you about offline. But I'd be like, it would be great to have you on for that as well. And we can sort out technical issues and stuff. But thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me on. And I want to apologize to you and your viewers. That my camera looks so shitty, and
Nice.
I was all prepared. I had my nice microphone, my HD camera all set up. But I'm just used to using Zoom. I don't know how to use Discord very much, so I'll try to work on that.
No. That's my bad that I didn't like tell you long enough beforehand so that we could figure something out. But so that's on me. So don't apologize. But anyway, yeah, thanks so much for coming on. I'm just gonna wrap up the stream, but I'll message you after.
Cool, thank you.
Cool. Cheers, Matt. Speak to you
Alright,
later.
cheers.
Bye.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Right, so back to just me, and this is going to be a very quick finish up because my laptop is literally going to die. But yeah, I hope everyone has enjoyed that. I really enjoyed going back and watching Matt's video again and having him on as well. After, because we haven't seen much of him recently because he's been moving and stuff, so he hasn't been uploading as much. But yeah, if Matt is still watching this, thanks so much again for coming on, Matt, and for everything you've done as well, because you're one of the people in the antinatalist community who has done a significant amount of work, and thank you for doing that discussion and uploading it as well. Cool. So I don't think there's anything left to say, or that I have time to say anyway, with the battery left. But thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry, I haven't really been paying as much attention to the chat as I do usually, so sorry if you've said something and I've missed it. But you can always reach me via email and stuff, which will be in the description. But yeah, thanks so much for watching again, and I will see everyone in the next one.